Glad you got your account back. It looks like, Mark.
Yeah, that was really strange. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I guess Twitter really disliked that I wanted the Jazz to trade Larry Markkinen. Uh, I think I told you I'd made that tweet. I had said something about, the Jazz better trade Larry before somebody does something stupid like trade for the corpse of Paul George. And so I was like, I don't know if that like triggered it. Apparently don't use the word corpse on Twitter anymore,
There
which is
you
probably
go.
a good word to avoid. But
So yeah, it looks like we are live. So hello world, we are live for the 2024 NBA Draft. I'm Adam Bushman. We got Josh Roberts on here, Mark Wallen, your Utah Jazz reps here, but we're going to be covering the draft at large. Happy to be here. Josh, what's top of mind for you as we're heading in here, counting down the minutes?
Um, I'm always fascinated to see what rumors are true and what is actually smoke. And so we've been seeing a ton of stuff today about the Jazz potentially moving up, moving back, moving out. I'm interested to see if they will move at all or if they're just going to stay pat at 10. That's I think the first thought that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, it is really tough to distinguish signal versus noise right at this moment. But whispers about them talking with San Antonio, talking with Washington, Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah, so there's really no certainty, but really exciting. It looks like the commissioner's kicking off the draft right now. Mark, what's top of mind for you as we head into the draft?
yeah, really similar. I've talked to some people, and I would say this year has been the hardest year for me to decipher what is real and what is not. And I've heard all sorts of weird, wild things. So yeah, I don't know. I usually I feel like I have a better sense of what's going to happen going into the draft, but this year I really don't. It's been a very difficult year to figure out what's going to really happen. So we'll see. It'll be fun.
Yeah, the variance that is going to be present here in the lottery is I mean, and beyond, really. It's going to make it really, really fun, but also just leaves all of us wondering if however the draft unfolds will even closely correlate what these players end up being in the NBA.
Yeah.
Josh, before you got on, you asked me what are my thoughts relative to Jazz direction. With the backdrop of the Mikal Bridges trade to New York and the swath of picks that the Nets got back from the Knicks in sending him there. And then the subsequent trade that the Nets made with Houston to get back some of the previous picks they had given up in the James Harden trade. They're going to fully tank now. They've clearly chosen a direction. I think it's really good for them. I'm a little bit torn because I love Lowry as a player. Our family loves him as well, but I think for the benefit of the team long term, I do think that the Jazz need to pick a direction. So far, they haven't. I understood the first year why they were kind of in wait and see mode, but we're now entering year three of wait and see mode. And if a team like Houston, who I don't know if they're as desperate as the New York Knicks were with Bridges, but if the Houston Rockets are really kind of over the barrel, if they're gonna part with a similar package, I gotta think that I'll grit my teeth and bite on that trade. What about you, Mark? Direction
I'm
wise.
yeah, I mean I have my thoughts of what I think we should do, which I've maybe got banned from Twitter for saying too aggressively. But uh, my sense, and Tony Jones has talked about this, but my sense is the Jazz still want to try and be competitive. Tony was on a podcast just last night talking about, hey, you can keep Laurie and improve on the periphery of the team and still be a bottom team in the West. And
Yeah.
so, and Locke even talked about this morning where it's hard to go big game hunting when you're multiple pieces away. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Jazz are reflective of that thinking where they're saying, hey, we have a piece in Laurie. We could maybe get a couple more pieces in free agency. Maybe not anything too, like, we're not going to go land some crazy, top 10, 15, 20 player in free agency or even in trade. but we can add a few more guys, still be bad because the West and the NBA is just that good right now, and still maintain our flexibility to go get a guy, whether that's in the draft, in a trade, or both, because they just have that many assets.
Yeah.
And and that would look an awful lot like it did the last couple of years, which I know a lot of fans wouldn't be thrilled about, including myself, but I also can understand and see the logic in that. And I don't get the sense that even with Houston being in a position that they're in, wanting to be aggressive, that's going to culminate in anything, at least tonight. Maybe at the trade deadline, as things progress, things change. But I'd be surprised if we saw any large movements tonight. Maybe some smaller movements. Maybe Clarkson gets moved. But ultimately, I think the Jazz are going to be closer to the same than different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And yeah, you could totally follow the logic, whether it's kind of aligned with what has most often worked for franchises of the Jazz ilk. Different directions can be misaligned there. It doesn't mean you won't hit or will surely hit, but Josh, you've been pretty vocal about your interest in direction. But any thoughts as you hear Mark and I kind of pontificating about it?
I agree with you guys. I mean, Tony's the man. We're really lucky to have Tony, and Tony's probably the most plugged in. And so, like, I buy a lot of what Tony's saying. My feeling is, personally, we're a small franchise. We get MVP caliber talent, top 10 in the NBA player caliber talent through the draft. That's how it's always been in our franchise. And so I think that we should tank for the next 2 years, the 25 and 26 draft. Everybody knows how good they're looking. We're in a position right now to where we could be bad. And garner a top 3, a top 5 pick in both of those drafts. On top of that, we have Cleveland and Minnesota's pick. Granted, next year, those probably aren't looking to do much for us. There probably won't be high picks. Granted, we'll see what happens with Donovan re-signing in Cleveland and Darius Garland staying there. I mean, the rumors are looking good for Cleveland, which surprises me. I'm not going to believe that until it actually happens, Donovan signing there. I think there's a chance they could still be bad next year. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's pivot slightly. It looks like the pick is in for the Atlanta Hawks here at number 1. Woj had mentioned about 15 minutes ago that Risacher was where they were leaning, though Reed Sheppard was a strong consideration there. That wasn't a name that I'd really heard for Atlanta, Reed Sheppard, but it does appear that they might be leaning Risacher. That is your number 1, Mark, but doesn't appear in the top 5 for Josh or I. Why do you feel like it might make a lot of sense for Atlanta here? Or maybe it doesn't necessarily make sense for Atlanta, but he's, from your angle, best player available.
Yeah, I just think that you win in today's league with wings, right? So I like Alex Sarr. I like Donovan Clingan. I like some of these other guys that you may consider up there, but Risacher is a really talented wing. He's young. He can do a little bit of everything. He led a defensive renaissance on the French team that he played for, had them help them to have their best season. He was often assigned to defend the other team's best player, and really just helped them to be a really good defensive team. And at his size, with his length, his athleticism, and his ability to do what he does on offense, which I know there's questions about his shooting, his ball handling, those kinds of things, but I think he does those at a sufficient level, and people forget he's still really young. He still is one of the younger prospects in this class, and to start with a baseline of, hey, he has the tools, he can defend, he knows how to play with other professionals and players and add value and help a team become a winner. I just think that's really... I mean, everybody wants a guy like that. Like, maybe he's not the number 1 or number 2 guy on your team, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up being a key contributor on a championship team at a premium position, right? So I often thought of his ceiling being kind of like peak Chandler Parsons or even like a Gordon Hayward, and his floor is maybe like a Cephalosha, right? Which that range is like, hey, maybe not like super sexy, but that's a super valuable, super helpful player that can help a team win, and that ultimately is why I kept him up there. I like him quite a bit.
Well, looks like the commissioner's telling the pick right now. And it is Risacher.
By the way, Jazz legend, was that Kyle Korver in the Hawks War Room? Is that what I saw in the corner?
It looked like it. It looked like 2005 or 2007, 2008 Kyle Korver.
He was looking good. I don't know if you guys have kept up with him, but he's like into these intense fitness challenges where they swim out into the ocean and pick up a rock underwater and carry it like a mile, and he does all sorts of crazy fitness challenges. He's looking fresh. He looks like he could get him out there for 5 or 10 minutes a game.
So we got bodybuilder Mike Bibby, and then we've got Kyle Korver doing the this kind of like CrossFit super challenges. That's wild.
Yeah.
So Josh, what do you kind of feel about this pairing of Risacher and the Atlanta Hawks? The Atlanta Hawks, they jumped from the late lottery here to number 1, right? So far they still got Trae Young, they still got DeJounte Murray, they've got Jalen Johnson. They've got a foundation there, and now they add Risacher, a wing. Mark kind of talked about what he liked about him. Where do you kind of interpret this fit?
I agree with Mark's comments. Tony talked about this in the Jackpotting Around podcast that they released yesterday. Like, you win in this league with wings, like Mark talked about. Tony has mentioned that. Tony alluded to many examples. Obviously, the Celtics are the most recent example of that. And so, yes, pairing Risacher with Jalen Johnson. I don't know what AJ Griffin's future looks like. The Hawks are weird because I don't know what their future looks like. I don't even know if Trae Young's going to be on that team next season.
Yeah.
But it's a safe pick in that regard. I mean, rewinding a little bit, it's going to be fascinating to look back on this draft. I don't think that this is going to be an Anthony Bennett type number 1 pick, but it's probably easily going to be the worst number 1 pick probably in the last decade, in my opinion. One thought I'm having there, just because I'm a lot lower on Risacher and the top end of this draft, like most people are. But the other thing that's interesting too is I don't even know if Risacher was in. You go back to November preseason mock drafts for this draft. I don't even think he was in the top 10. I mean, I know Givoni has been pushing this Risacher train for probably the last 3 or 4 months, and so he's kind of been in on this. But I just think it's pretty interesting. Pretty cool for Risacher, obviously, that he really wasn't projected here, and today he is the number 1 pick going to the Atlanta Hawks. So that's kind of cool, but just a very strange draft already to start here.
Where do you think Risacher would go last year? Like, what pick would he go at in comparison? Because I agree, I like him, but pretty weak number 1 pick, right?
I don't. To be honest, just off the top of my head, I don't even think he'd go top 5. I think he'd probably go somewhere 6 through 10, if I had to guess.
Does he go before or after Coulibaly? Because they're kind of similar, right? Like, had kind of a meteoric rise. Obviously, Coulibaly was a little bit later than Risacher, who was kind of near the top most of this draft cycle, but kind of similar, right? French player, kind of similar story in some ways. And Coulibaly went number 9 or whatever he went.
I think he probably would have gone a pick or 2 before Coulibaly. I think that Coulibaly was more raw last year than Risacher is, but I agree with you. They're kind of right there with each other.
Yeah, he might have been 5 to Detroit. They got enamored with Osar, as all of us did, but they might have overweighted what Risacher can do shooting the ball. But he could have been an attractive pick for Orlando at 6, who ended up taking Anthony Black. But yeah, I think for me the defense, the shooting, I think it's going to translate. The swing stuff will be, can he do stuff off the dribble, right? Is he just attack a closeout and get to the rim, or can he pass off out of a closeout, building off an advantage? Can he get into a shot that isn't just catch and shoot? If he's doing some of those things off the dribble, he might be Trey Murphy, and
And that's a good player.
It's a really good player. Not quite what most want in a number one overall pick, but in such a draft like this, if he hits, you're gonna look back smiling. So, I get it, and that was a really interesting kind of floor. Or hey, even if things kind of go wrong, you're probably at Thabo Sefolosha. You're definitely going to be looking back at the number one overall pick if it's a Thabo Sefolosha and being like, oh darn, we really wish we could have gotten better
ideal
value than that. But if any team that is traditionally kind of in the number one spot could kind of stay afloat in a way, having a Thabo Sefolosha be their number one pick, it might be Atlanta, just given they've got all-star caliber talent on the team, even though it's quite a bit up in the air.
Yeah, and again, like Sefolosha was a part of some really good teams when ironically during his time in Atlanta, right? And he had value that was insulated for quite some time. And it's just hard to find wings that are playable, and especially wings that can play defense and do a little bit off the dribble. And that's where I really like him a lot. Is I don't think he's going to be as good of a shooter as like a Trey Murphy, but I think he's got a little bit more to his game off the dribble, and he's a little bit better of a playmaker, passer, and I just think that's really valuable in today's game.
Well, it looks like the Frenchman Alex Sarr is going number 2 to the Washington Wizards. Yeah. I mean, both Josh and Mark had Sarr as their top next available remaining. This kind of made a lot of sense for the Washington Wizards, who've got some talent throughout many of the other positions, but they moved off of Daniel Gafford at the deadline. So it kind of made a lot of sense for them to go with, a big like this who, if things hit, could be kind of in that Bam Adebayo, all-star level type, player who could switch out onto the perimeter, defend the paint, and is skilled, outside of just 3 feet from the hoop on offense. Josh, tell me about what you love especially from Alex Sarr.
So he was my number one on my board because I feel like Sarr probably has the least amount of things you can probably nitpick at. Everybody's kind of got red flags. I mean, Risacher was up there as well. Like, he's pretty well-rounded player, but Sarr is arguably the best defensive player in this draft, and he's a lot more skilled than most bigs are at this stage and at this age in terms of what he can do offensively. He's still very young, obviously. He's still got a lot of growth, but I like that he can shoot the ball. I like that he's a great rim protector. I love the Bam Adebayo kind of comparison because, I mean, Bam's an all-defensive guy, but Bam is not limited on the offensive end like Rudy Gobert or maybe like a Donovan Clingan type player where they're just like amazing defensive players, but they have huge deficiencies on the other side of the ball. That's why I really like him. Those are guys you need to have in the playoffs. Two-way players.
No doubt.
Josh, do you have him as a? Sorry, I was going to ask. Do you have him as a 4 or a 5 in the NBA?
So I think that's the beauty of him as well, is you can probably play him either. Kind of like Bam, a little bit. I don't know if I'm really solid on him one way or the other. I would probably lean him being a 5, but he's versatile enough that he gives you flexibility in your roster and your rotation to kind of do multiple things with him.
Yeah, you kind of hope that he's the type of player that they found in Horford, Porzingis for the Celtics, to where, it kind of may not matter what you call him, a 4 or 5. You surround him with talent and you lean on him in certain situations, and it just works with the team. I've kind of pegged the low, or hey, even if things kind of went wrong, he's probably Christian Wood. and hopefully Christian Wood with a better attitude. Like Christian Wood with a better attitude, like that's probably one of your better players off the bench making a real impact. The problem with Christian Wood is his attitude and kind of gets in the way of that talent, and he has zero impact.
Yeah, like Celestial Kingdom Christian Wood is awesome, right? Like he doesn't have the attitude problems. He doesn't get lazy when he gets money. Like Pete Christian Wood was pretty sick, actually.
Oh, Detroit Christian Wood was quite fun.
Yeah, and that actually is my comp for Sarr, which, that makes me like him, and also I'm kind of terrified of his floor because I do think he's got some Christian Wood in him in a bad way where he's not really overly physical. I mean, he's not really built that way either. Like, he's not a big guy. He's super thin. He kind of avoids contact. Similar to Christian Wood, he's like pretty athletic, can make some plays at the rim, both on offense and defense. He can guard a little bit on the perimeter. But, like, he also doesn't really have, like, an elite skill. Like, I don't really know what Sarr's elite skill is. And that makes me nervous, like with guys. If I don't know, like, hey, for sure you have an NBA bona fide skill that, like, you can hang your hat on, I just get a little weirded out by that, especially if there's maybe some questions about, like, your physicality and how you're going to buy into the game on a physical level. So I really like Sarr. I just think it also, especially at the power forward position, it's just such a replaceable thing. Like, you can find guys off the street to play that role nowadays, I feel like. And if you don't have a difference maker there and a guy who can make some plays, I don't know. Sometimes the value is hard to stomach, but overall, like, really talented player, can do a lot, and so we'll have to see how he continues to develop. I don't really love the landing spot. It feels like a very Washington pick, and I don't mean that in a good way. So we'll see. Poor Washington. Hopefully things get turned around there.
Yeah. I mean, they do desperately need, an all-star, all-NBA type talent to start pulling that franchise out of the muck. But they could also just do with players who make positive impact at any time they're on the floor, and that would be huge if Sarr could do something like that. Well, looks like the commissioner's ready to comment on the third pick, so we'll see where the Houston Rockets are going with this one.
Shout out Cole Zwicker, former fan, draft analyst, now turned Houston Rockets front office analyst. Guessing this pick is influenced by him in some ways.
Well, there you go. Yeah, big shout out. So Reed Sheppard, Kentucky. This guy's an analytics darling, no doubt. He just shot the cover off the ball. But before we dig into Reed kind of in detail, I'm curious, how are you both feeling about how this draft is playing out? Maybe overall, but then in maybe the context of the Utah Jazz.
So right now the draft is chalk, right? I mean, this is going pretty much how it's been reported.
Yeah.
Kind of to the point. Well, I guess you just made the point, Mark. I don't know if I really love the fit with any of the three picks. I mean, you could argue the fit with Risacher in Atlanta. We don't know what their future looks like. Washington is a mess, and so I kind of feel bad for Sarr there. I mean, Reed is one of my darlings. I love Reed, but I mean, they have so many guards in Houston right now, and so I don't really know where he fits into that. The thing about Reed is Reed himself is a great fit for anybody, just because Reed is a winner. He makes winning plays. He's intelligent. He can shoot the ball. I mean, the big knock on Reed is obviously his size. If Reed was 3 or 4 inches bigger, he would easily have been the number 1 pick in this draft. But he is small. I've had plenty of arguments on social media about Reed's ability to defend in the NBA being translatable. I think it is, but I think a lot of people are really concerned about that because of his size. But again, is he a great fit in Houston? They're all kind of weird fits.
Yeah. Quick comment on the defense. I had heard that his workout with the Jazz, that he could not guard the assistant coaches, which surprised me. But I heard he really struggled in his workout with the Jazz to play defense. I heard when they got into, like, live game action, which is really where I think Sheppard, like, he's a gamer, right? Like, he really impacts the game. Like, I think he would probably look underwhelming in a workout setting. I mean, he's a great athlete, so athletic testing, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, but just in terms of like, hey, run these drills, do these things. He's not like an overwhelming presence or anything like that, right? But I don't know. I do think that's a little bit of a question mark. How does he survive defensively in the NBA? And frankly, like I'm lower on Sheppard because I think like if he's not John Stockton, which I don't think is totally out of his realm of outcomes, but is probably pretty unlikely, then he's probably like Patty Mills. And if he's Patty Mills, like great player, helps you win games, but to take a Patty Mills at number 3 is pretty rich for me. So I don't know. I interesting pick, but I agree with your comment overall of chalky so far, but not loving the fits necessarily for each of these players, which by the way is not great. It's already kind of a bad talent class at the top, and now you got them landing in funky situations where it's not clear how it's going to turn out. Might be an interesting retrospective on this draft class when it's all said and done. It'll be very interesting.
So I think that the funny thing about this draft, and this has kind of all been predicted too, and like we've said, this is chalk. I don't think we're really going to love like any of the like top 10 picks, but like 10 through 30 in this draft is where like the value is really going to be. Like that's an amazing pick. Like I love the fit there and things like that. And I can't remember who made this comment. I wonder if this was again from the Jackpotting Around podcast with Tony that they just did, but when they made a comment where they think a lot of these guys are going to look really good on their second contracts, maybe on a different team.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to kind of follow that and see how that pans out with these players going in the top 5, 10 at least in this draft.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, for Reed, in kind of an average scenario, I wonder if he ends up being like a Jason Terry, where if he's starting, the team probably isn't getting to where they want to be. But if he's kind of your off the bench, one of your primary off the bench guys, and he's rolling, that could take a team pretty far in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If that's the type of talent you have in that type of role. So I wonder if that's something. The fit where, and it's interesting, I've kind of pegged, hey, in a good scenario, maybe he could be a Fred VanVleet type if he develops more of, some shot creation. So it's funny that he's going to a team that has Fred VanVleet, that has Jalen Green. I don't know. It's gonna be strange, especially since with their most recent draft picks, they've tended to go with size and tended to go with those kind of more wing type players. So it's an interesting one. What are your guys' thoughts on San Antonio here with the 4th pick? Is this, some have said like this is an obvious Castle spot for them. Others have said, hey, maybe they, go Nikola Topic and, even
Yeah. I'd be
try
surprised.
their luck at next year at another kind of mid-lottery pick.
Topic would have made sense if he was healthy, but Spurs are like weirdly in win now mode, so I don't think that they want to do that anymore. I've heard that they were in on Clingan, and then that kind of came out today. Now, was that smoke? Was that something else? I don't know. I will say if Stephon Castle gets past them, I would expect the Jazz to be making some phone calls. So I'm very interested to see what happens here.
Yeah, so I mean, with Castle going to San Antonio, like you were kind of alluding to, Adam, they're very scary defensively. Victor Wembanyama is probably going to be the defensive player of the year, and then you add arguably one of the best defenders in this class. You have Ryan Dunn, you've got Alex Sarr, and then you've got probably Steph Castle. So they're going to be elite defensively. It looks like the pick's in. You guys seeing that?
Yep.
Steph Castle, that's right.
I mean, I have been famously lower on Steph all year long because I don't really believe in the shooting, and I think that's going to be a problem for him. He's really got to work on that, and for him to, I think, reach his ceiling, that's got to be he's got to be at least a 36, 37% 3-point shooter. So we'll see how that happens. Like if that's going to cause problems offensively for Wembanyama, are they going to be able to help on him because Steph can't shoot? Is that going to clog up driving lanes and things like that? We'll have to see. I'm also interested to see if he is going to be their point guard of the future. How his camp has kind of been pushing that. I don't think I ever really envisioned him. I thought he was going to be an awesome big 2 guard. But we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I always thought that there was some natural symmetry pairing him with someone who, could operate as the point, but is more than comfortable getting off ball too.
Like Keontae?
Like Keontae, yeah, that would have been a nice pairing in my eyes. I'm curious with him going to the San Antonio Spurs. They have not quite a Keontae in the sense of they're not running a ton of point guard duties through him, but they got that other guard who's been really shooting super well, Devin Vassell. So, maybe there's some approximate symmetry there where they could kind of share some ball handling responsibilities. You give Castle that kind of feeling of being the primary point guard type, but he could still kind of get off ball, be a slasher type.
Yeah, I personally don't buy Castle as a point guard. I was actually kind of baffled by him and his camp pushing that during the pre-draft process.
I've never understood what kind of benefit that has. His whole brand has kind of been like I'll do whatever it takes to win, I'll accept whatever role. I don't know.
Well, and what's crazy, I don't know, this is probably low utility conversation, but what's crazy is Castle reminds me a lot of Jaylen Brown in so many ways. And especially even the narrative around Castle is very similar to Brown when he came out. Very similarly built, very similar skill set, had the issue with the shooting coming out. It just reminds me so much of him in so many ways. I would have leaned into that because Jaylen Brown is sick and just won won the championship and won the Finals MVP. If I was him in his camp, I'd be yeah, I'm Jaylen Brown. So I don't know why they're oh yeah, I'm a point guard. I don't know, very strange to me, but I do again, kind of a little bit of a weird fit with San Antonio, but I like this fit the best so far. They need a point of attack defender like Castle to help Wemby, and I think that's going to be an awesome fit. And they also, I don't know if San Antonio really needs a point guard, in the traditional sense. I think it would be nice to have one to run pick and rolls and throw lobs to Wemby, but you're going to get the ball to Wemby one way or the other in a lot of different ways, and Castle and Vassell can do that already. They can make plays and do that, and so I don't know. I think just kind of a two-headed monster. It does make me wonder if Keldon Johnson is going to stay in San Antonio. He's kind of been on the outs there anyways, and he seems Castle seems like a hopeful upgrade over him, which may be of interest to the Jazz. Maybe that's somebody that they take interest in. But I don't know. Really like Castle. I do know the Jazz really liked him a lot, and we're going to be aggressive in trying to move up to get him if he made it past number 4. Yeah. So bummer for them. But love it for San Antonio. San Antonio's building a monster over there. Freaking San Antonio is just going to be good for forever, I feel like.
Well, I think the fit is perfect. And to your point, Mark, especially, and this, you guys might not agree with this because I'm very high on Rob, but especially if they take Dillingham at 8 now.
Oh my God.
Because kind of to your point, does San Antonio really need a traditional point guard? That's not Steph Castle. I think he's perfect as a 2 guard there, and he would complement Rob perfectly because Rob's big knock. He's small. He can't defend. He's a point guard, but he's not a traditional point guard. He's a microwave scorer. I don't know why balloons are going up on my screen there. That was weird.
Oh, sorry. I just saw
Happy
the next
birthday,
pick.
Josh.
I won't spoil it, but
okay. But I think that's perfect. You got Wembanyama, you got Dillingham, and you got Castle. I think those all mesh and fit super well together.
So the question is, Mark, since you saw the pick and they're showing Dennis Lindsay here, is this a Dennis Lindsay pick?
Jazz legend Dennis Lindsay. Love that guy.
This is a Dennis Lindsay pick.
I don't know. This one is spicy. I don't know. This
I love
What are
this
you
pick.
looking at?
I love it. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
really. Well, part of me it's surprising to me, just because there's a little bit of a family relationship with Buzeles, right? His dad, his son is the agent of Buzeles, and that was always the connection there with Detroit, and it's not that. And I don't know, very polarizing prospect here that is coming off the board. So
I kind of want to just be shocked from the commissioner's mouth, so I'm going to avoid
I won't
Twitter
say a thing.
for 30 more seconds, until he walks out here. But
this
at this point,
this is good
at,
for the Jazz, by the way. I think so far. You even kind of asked that earlier on the Sheppard pick. I don't know if we totally answered it. I actually think that there's Sheppard going before the Jazz is good. I think this pick is good for the Jazz too. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. We still got a ways to go. But
I get some validation here because I've been pushing this player for a long time. I've been pushing really hard. He's very high. I'm high on him. He's high on my board.
Collier, then.
No, it's not Collier, even though you're right, Adam. I love Isaiah Collier. But it's funny because I was very low on this player to start the draft process early, and I kind of bought into him because his production was just undeniable. Like statistically, like guys this young putting up numbers like that, I don't know why so many people were so low on him. His motor is very high. He's a two-way player. I mean, he does have one large deficiency that people knock on, but I like this pick a lot. I mean, to Mark's point, I don't know if the fit is very good, and so that doesn't make a ton of sense, but I'm validated in him going this high.
yeah, well, I think you and me both, and I'll spoil it now because the commissioner is saying it. I think you and me both were higher on Ron Holland than general consensus, right? And there had been so much talk about him slipping and falling, and he ended up 7th on my big board, which at one point I think I had him at like 4, and then I thought about the shooting concerns and all that, but at the end of the day, like, dude was killing it in the G League against professionals, and is like a freak athlete, has the build, and like if all he's got to do is figure out how to shoot, like, great. Especially in this draft, he often gets compared to RJ Barrett, which is exactly who I kind of saw when watching him. You get RJ Barrett here at the 5th pick in this draft, I think you're pretty happy.
Yeah.
But man, so many people were so down on him. So to have him go this high, and like I was mentioning earlier, Buzeles was linked to Detroit forever. Like that was like one of the few spots where the player and the team fit was like the same across all boards and all mocks for like the whole cycle. I just felt like that was the pick for forever. So this is very different, and this was one of the guys that was maybe gonna be there for the Jazz at 10, or maybe even last longer than that, and now he's above.
Yeah.
And also, this makes sense now why he canceled the workout with the Jazz.
Yes.
Right? He must have known that he was going above, and I had even had that thought, but I was like, no, there's so much talk of him sliding. But boy, going 5th, that's awesome.
Yeah. There was a lot of smoke about him falling outside of the lottery, which was really bonkers, given that just handful of months ago, he was still considered in the top 5-6. I loved what he showed defensively. His activity numbers, steals and blocks, subtracted the fouls. He was a monster. And then I really actually liked, he didn't shoot the ball well, but I actually really liked his process for generating his own offense. He really leaned into putting his head down and getting to the rim, and he showed some real handle and some wiggle to create some jump shots and stuff. So, yeah, this is honestly a bit disappointing. We all had Ron Holland on our top remaining here, so the fact that he goes a bit earlier than he had kind of been mocked, it's
he would have been fun on the Jazz. Like that's a guy I would have been like excited about, I think. Like we just haven't had a wing of his caliber in like ever. I feel like. So I know he's got his rough
nicely
spots.
with Keontae, yeah.
Yeah, and just him and Sexton would have been like maniacs together, I feel like, which would have just been super fun. And if nothing else, like we would have had an athletic wing who could like dunk on some people, which we just haven't had in forever, right? Like we just don't get those guys in Utah. So very interesting. Yeah, I like that. I like that pick. Dennis Lindsey, Jazz legend, not going with the big man. Shock of the draft so far.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what Detroit's offseason looks like now, because reading through Twitter, a lot of people, I agree with a lot of people's comments. He's not a good fit with Cade. He's not a good fit with the Sarr. Like, it's just not a good fit or like with Jaden Ivey. So it'll be interesting to see. I obviously don't think Cade's going to get moved, but I mean, maybe Jaden Ivey gets moved. I know some Jazz fans like Jaden Ivey, maybe as like a reclamation project. I'm not that high on that, but I wonder if this is hinting towards some movement and some changes there in their roster.
Could
Also
we
very
talk
possible.
Detroit into Jordan Clarkson and some sort of Ivy? Does Dennis Lindsey still have some love? I don't know.
I was also thinking it's pretty possible that this is also just a signal of, oh, hey, some reshuffling of roles there in the front office, buying some extra time and equity for, this front office to just make the right, what they feel is the right pick, instead of a pick that fits the structure of the team already there. And if they're proven right here in the first year or two of Holland's career, I'm certain they'll start structuring things in a way that complements the whole. But I mean, Detroit needs some serious basketball gods blessing here, because good grief.
They need shooting.
Yeah, well, in spicy take, like, I don't know if Cade Cunningham is good enough to really build around yet. Like, he's talented, but he's one of those guys I think is kind of overrated. Like, I just wouldn't be drafting this high in the draft and like specifically thinking like, oh, I really have to make sure we're building this team around Cunningham. Like, I just think you just take the best guy available still and like see what happens, right? And I think that's what this pick is, which I totally understand and support.
Yeah, he's still riding all of the stuff he showed at Montverde, Oklahoma State. He's still riding all of that. I know, he was injured that second year and whatnot, but even still riding, the what people were reporting out of Team USA training camp, that he was like, really, really showing out. Didn't make the team, but everybody's just like, oh, look out for Cade. He just seems to be riding an interesting wave of, without quite showing it yet.
Well, you know who he reminds me of, which some people think I'm being contradictory to myself, but I don't think I am because of my opinion of this player. He reminds me of Carmelo Anthony, who, like, everybody thought Carmelo was like the sickest dude on the planet. And, like, frankly, Melo, for a large part of his career, was just kind of like empty stats guy and, like, couldn't win, And that reminds me of Cade a lot. Like, he puts up big numbers, but, like, they haven't been winning. And I know his team's not great, but, like, at some point, you got to prove, like, if you're really that good, you're going to just find a way to help your team win more games. And he just hasn't done that. And, like, if he's the modern Melo, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And I don't think Melo was that good, honestly. So there you go, another hot take. Melo sucks.
So this Charlotte Hornets team is up and pretty interesting. They already got Mark Williams, so I don't quite think that they're a natural and obvious Donovan Clingan team. I think they're really kind of bought into what LaMelo Ball does for them, even though the last couple of years have been pretty injury riddled and not quite drama free. But they really hit the Brandon Miller pick last year. What seems natural to you, Josh, from a Charlotte Hornets perspective?
Well, I've already seen the pick, and so I'll ignore it and I'll address your question. I originally kind of had imagined a player like Reed Sheppard going there. I thought he would maybe be a better fit for them than Houston. just because Charlotte is such a poverty franchise. They need winning players, and that's how I've always kind of view Reed. Like, he's a hard-nosed, smart, tough, hustle winning player. Like, they need somebody like that to pair with LaMelo and Miller, and I think that trio would have really helped give them a better trajectory going forward. But obviously, knowing that Reed is in Houston, I don't know who really would be. I wish I had my board up so I could look at who my best player available would be. But I don't know if Rob Dillingham's really that good fit there with LaMelo, with Miller. But here's the pick anyway. You guys seeing it?
Yep.
We can probably talk about it now.
Tidjane Salaün.
My guy, Tidjane Salaün. Hate the landing spot, by the way, but love the
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm very so you, Mark, Tony, and Leaf are so high on Tidjane, and Leaf and Tony were right in the sense that they didn't think he was going to be there for the Jazz. I had no idea why they were thinking that, just because, in my opinion, he's very raw. He doesn't have an elite skill set, it really in any regard. I mean, his length is awesome. I think his athleticism is a little bit underwhelming. His shot needs a lot of work. I think he could be a Giannis type player in maybe 3 or 4 years, or a Coulibaly type player, but I think he's a project and he's a ways out. And Charlotte is not a developmental. They don't have a developmental like what's the word that I'm looking for?
Yeah, they're just not known
Player
for like
development,
developing these kind of guys.
A reputation. That's the word I'm
Yeah,
looking for. Sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't understand that, but I could be completely wrong. He could be awesome for them.
The only thing I will say, because I think I generally agree with you on the fit. I don't maybe agree with some of the assessment of the player, but we can argue about that more later. But the only thing about the thinking here with Charlotte is one thing that I think he's really good at, Salaün, is off-ball movement, and he plays really hard and attacks the rim. He's a pretty good slasher and cutter off-ball. And with his size and athletic ability, I think that could be really interesting next to LaMelo, right? Like some of these highlights you can see, like
And Miller, yeah.
Like he can just be that off ball. Like he doesn't need the ball, which is great because LaMelo and Miller need the ball, and he can just kind of be that glue guy that's hustling, getting the boards, finishing at the rim. Like he's just, I don't know. To me, I think that might be kind of the interesting fit here if you want to argue for that. But yeah, he needs some time to develop. Tony Jones, I can't remember where or when he said this, but he kind of made the comparison to of Taylor Hendricks to him, right? Like the tools are like off the charts, but just really raw skill set wise. The only thing that I think is different there is I think Salaün has a way better feel for the game and plays the game at a higher level of basketball IQ and feel than Hendricks has. And that's honestly been the biggest thing holding Hendricks back, in my opinion. So, if you can put that kind of feel for the game and IQ into a Hendricks like type body, I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm so high on him. I just think guys like him don't come around very often. Very unique, athletic and physical build, and has a really high ceiling because of that. And I think a generally high floor as well. I just don't know. Like, you got to be careful with him, or else that pick might look pretty questionable. So.
When I was watching Salaün, the two big things that just popped right away was the confidence with his shot. I mean, even pulling 5-6 feet beyond the 3-point line, and the confidence in his form and in his strength to shoot from that far. Even though he didn't shoot exceptionally well, I was really impressed by it. And he shot a few too many threes that I might like. Given his size, I wanted to see a little bit more to the rim. However, when he was headed to the rim, he's not an elite athlete. I agree with you, Josh. His athleticism is a bit overrated. But I just loved how much power and force he had. Every single time he went there, he just went with such force and power. And I think being tied for the youngest player projected to be drafted tonight, already with an elite frame, wingspan, and pretty well filled out at just shy of 23 BMI. I mean, this guy, I think I think he has, the potential to be kind of, if things go well, I wonder if he's kind of in a Jonathan Kuminga um, type pathway.
So I agree with what you're saying there, Adam. With the way the board's falling right now, like what are you guys hoping for the Jazz? Are you hoping for Buzelis? Are you hoping for Cody Williams? Like, who are you hoping falls to the Jazz at 10?
Yeah, so I just tweeted this out, but it's Cody Williams and Devin Carter or bust for me. I know Buzelis is falling. I do not like him.
Because of the jumper, or what don't you like
everything? About Buzelis? I don't know. I just when I watched him, I just never left feeling like
excited.
Like yeah. I always wanted more from him. And frankly, this is like me just doing conjecture, but he seems very immature to me, both on and off the court. And like I think that shows up in his game a lot. Like he just I think he thinks he's better than he actually is. And I worry about that. And I think he's got a lot more developing to do. I always thought it was weird how he was being ranked above Ron Holland. And like all the things that people are saying about Ron Holland and the issues with the Ignite, somehow he avoided that. And I just never understood that. And now we're seeing that play out. Like, I always thought those guys should be flipped, and they are. I'll shut up about it because the pick's in for Portland. And they got to be thrilled, by the way. Portland's got to be thrilled that Clingan made it all the way here.
This is probably my favorite fit so far in terms of the pick and the fit. That's amazing value and fit for Portland.
Yeah.
It could absolutely just jumpstart everything. It can make Shaedon Sharpe better. It could, seriously... make their the number 3 pick from last draft just absolutely way better than what was a little bit of a rough first rookie year. But so Donovan Clingan to Portland is really nice, and I think you're spot on, Mark. I think it's Devin Carter. Is probably one that's pretty interesting for me to get at 9. I also have Cody Williams. Carrington, I'd probably be fine at 10. But you guys have both mentioned Buzelis. The thing that's got me a bit concerned is he's got some elite size, but he is a below average finisher at the rim for a forward. At his size and his supposed feel, and all the highlights they're going to show when he gets picked, I'm sure are going to be him dunking and laying up at the rim, but he wasn't very good at it.
Yeah, well, the thing too, and we can talk more about him when we get to whoever picks him, but the thing with Buzelis is he's just below average on everything. Like, he just doesn't do really anything well other than be like an athlete, and I think he's kind of overrated there too, right? But something I forgot about though, real quick on Clingan with Portland, is DeAndre Ayton is still there, so you're gonna have those guys playing together, which is actually super funky. But
Rob Williams.
Yeah, is Ayton the new worse version of LaMarcus Aldridge, where he's really a center that plays power forward and likes to shoot it too much? Is that what we're getting again in Portland? But I guess, I don't know. They need a guy like Clingan though, because Ayton is just not that guy. Kind of interesting.
Which I think that's what this pick makes clear, right? Obviously, they don't believe in Ayton, and so they're like, we're going to move forward with the direction that we see here is going to be better for our franchise, and it's not going to include DeAndre Ayton.
Walker Kessler versus Clingan here for the division is going to be compelling for the next foreseeable future.
I guess a question other people have been posting on social media. I'm interested to see what you guys think. Does this make Walker more available to maybe Memphis? Do they look at maybe trading for Walker Kessler where they didn't get Donovan Clingan? They didn't move up for him? Or do they take a Zach Edey or wait and get a Kel'el Ware or Deron Holmes or a center there?
Well, so it's a good question. I honestly, two things. One, I don't think the Jazz actually have much interest in moving Kessler. Tony's been talking about that pretty openly. It sounds like they've kind of had their come to Jesus moment, and I think they're
duked it out and made up.
Yeah, and I also don't think Kessler really has much value across the league. I just don't know if any of these teams would really value him that much. Like, I think if like, let's say Memphis was interested in him, you would probably do a 9-10 flip and then add Kessler. Like, and I think that would be optimistic for the Jazz on Kessler value.
And he's got a lot more rebound potential for this upcoming year.
Yeah, I just think he's more valuable to us than he is to anybody else, right? Zach Edey is still available for Memphis at 9. There's been some talk about that. It would be a really interesting fit. I'm really curious to see what happens here, though. Devin Carter's dad works for Memphis, and Devin Carter was also really heavily rumored to have fans in San Antonio, and Devin Carter would be freaking sick in San Antonio with Stephon Castle and Wemby and all those guys, and like talk about the guard that they need there. Like, oh my heck. But man, I don't know. Does Cody Williams make it to 10? Like, chat. Are we back? Does. Are we back? Does Cody Williams make it to 10?
I think he probably does, and you know, Devin Carter, one of the optimistic, or you know, if things go well, you know, he could be Derek White, and San Antonio traded Derek White, and you know, he landed with Boston and a really good structure around him, and you know, he took off. You know, that might be something. You know, Devin Carter surrounded by, you know, another elite defender, and you know, guy who's on MVP Hall of Fame level track in Victor Wembanyama. You know, maybe that just looks great from day one. You look exasperated, Josh. What's top of mind for you?
Well, I don't want to spoil anything. Back to your guys' point, and it seems like everybody in Jazz Nation, I'm just so low on Cody Williams. Like, I was tweeting with Art on Twitter, and he's like, "What's an outcome that you would not be happy about today?" I was like, honestly, with this draft, that's the nice thing about going into this. I don't think I'm really going to be upset. The only guy I don't want the Jazz to take is Kyle Filipowski, who I hate, but I'm very low on Cody Williams. Like, I get the measurables and I get his pedigree, but I just feel like out of all the guys, talent-wise, people are projecting the most with Cody Williams. Like, in terms of like what he's shown, that was kind of I was kind of like your feelings towards Buzelis. Mark was kind of mine watching Colorado games all year. I was like, I'm waiting to see like something pop here with Cody. Athletically, like off the dribble. I mean, he did shoot the ball well, but I mean, he only made 17 threes the whole year. The sample size was nothing. And so there was nothing that really got me excited about Cody. I can understand, like I said before, the idea of Cody, but I just don't really think he's going to take the trajectory that his brother has taken. And people would make the argument, it was like, well, he's so much further along than Jalen was at the same age. And I was like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was the case, it's like all these guys that were further along than older guys would surpass and have these trajectories and things like that. But that's just not how this works. It's possible. It very well could be that he becomes a better player than Jalen, but I think it's going to be the opposite, in my opinion. Like, his best case scenario is he's going to be a very good role player, like a 3-and-D wing. He's long. Like, those are the type of players that you want, right? And so I see the idea there, but I haven't actually seen it yet from Cody.
Spurs blew it.
No, they didn't. They took the guy I told you guys. He fits perfectly there with Castle. That's my guy, Rob.
Devin Carter would have been sick there in San Antonio, though. Oh, that combo would have been amazing. But you did call it Dillingham, and I know you're high on Dillingham. He was your best player available still, right? Is that right?
I mean, people have talked about Spurs, you know, trying to make a Godfather offer to Cleveland to get Darius Garland. You know, they might have just got him if he hits. You know?
Yep. Yeah. And of all, like I said, of all like the misgivings with Rob, like, that's the perfect landing spot for him to cover up his deficiencies. Wembanyama and Castle right there. And so it's like he can just light it up, and you don't necessarily have to worry about teams targeting because you've got Wembanyama to cover him, and you've got Castle essentially to cover him at the guard spot there. So I think that's awesome for Rob.
My only thing, I mean, I like this for Rob just because he's going to get exposed on defense, but he's got Castle, he's got Vassell, and he's got Wemby now, right? Like,
That's huge for him.
Yeah, like he might actually just be able to survive with that around him. He is really dynamic on offense. He is fun. He was one of the most fun watches during this draft cycle. Just really dynamic athlete, ball handler, scorer. And like, you know, like those small guys that will give it to you like that, like those are just fun guys to watch. I really actually liked him quite a bit on my first watch through. It's just the size. It's just so concerning. I actually went back through and looked at all the NBA Finals teams for the last, I think it was 15 years, maybe 14, a little shy of 15. The number of players that are 6'2" and under on NBA Finals teams, whether they're the winner or loser of the championship, just teams that make it to the finals, the number of guys that are 6'2" or smaller that actually play for those teams is like very, very small list. Like I think it was Patty Mills and Steph Curry is technically just over that. Like, I think he's like 6'3", 6'4". But then there was like one other guy.
How far back were you looking?
I think I went back like 14 years. And so like Patty Mills was in there, and then
was JJ Barea with
Kyle Lowry.
Mavs?
Kyle Lowry was one, but it's like, and I think that was just about it. I don't know if Barea came up in that, but I don't know if I would consider Barea to be like a major guy on one of those teams either. Like I don't.
Oh, certainly was a major. Yeah.
Yeah, so like starting level, like top 5 to 6, 7, 8 guy. It's just really rare. Like it's just hard to win with guys that are that small in your starting lineup or in your main rotation. So. And that's where it's like with Dillingham, like, okay, he's not Kyle Lowry, just different players, different build. Not Patty Mills, different player, different build. I don't know, like I always kind of comp Dillingham to Isaiah Thomas, like Boston Isaiah Thomas. He's obviously not that small, but functionally, I think he kind of plays that way. I don't know, like, how does that work? Is that really a guy, like, is he going to be the starting point guard for the Spurs when they win the championship?
Well, hold up, Mark. Are you guys seeing the trade?
No, I'm not. Catch us up.
So the Minnesota Timberwolves just traded for Rob Dillingham.
Oh,
and so
wow.
You've got Rob Dillingham going to play with Anthony Edwards now, and another defensive player of the year that can cover him there. They just traded a 2030 and a 2030 first round pick and a 2031 pick swap with San Antonio, and that. So basically, just throw out the window everything I just said about his fit in San Antonio. But to Mark's point, he is now going essentially to a contending team. And so, yeah, we're going to see. Granted, it's probably way too early for Rob, right? Like, they're ready to contend. He's a rookie. I don't even know, like, if he'll necessarily be in the rotation. But that is a fascinating move, and we're going to see really quickly. Yeah, if you're right, Mark. I mean, we know that the league is built this way. Like small guards really struggle to survive,
and that's just so against Minnesota's identity. Like they're all about defense. Like again, another team.
So they need that. They need a microwave scorer off the bench.
Well, but that's where like another team I would have thought. Devin Carter, like it can give you the scoring and the defense. Yeah. That is bizarre. That is an interesting one. And by the way, Memphis, Zach Edey, who, by the way, I think the Jazz were like kind of weirdly in on. So the Zach Edey haters of Jazz Nation have got to be thrilled right now. And by the way, Devin Carter and Cody Williams, my two guys, are still on the board for our Utah Jazz. So, chat, we're back.
So we know, Mark, this is how me and Adam were sitting here. The board fell perfect for the Jazz last year. We already know that the Jazz will not take either one of those guys to spite you because that's what their MO is.
If they take Dalton Knecht, I'm logging off the stream if they take Knecht.
What was that, Adam?
Oh, I just said I got my tissues right here. I'm prepared this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So, based off of last year, like, I don't know, we're going like Devin McCain or Jared McCain.
Locks guy.
Well, I love Jared McCain too. At this point, I don't think all of my guys, if they surprise me with Isaiah Collier, which I know they're not going to do, I'll be happy. But I know already I'm just going to be meh whoever the pick is, whether it's Carter, whether it's Buzelis, whether it's Williams, whether it's, I don't know, whoever else they put in there. I agree with Mark. I don't really like the Knecht pick there for the Jazz. But we'll see what happens.
How do you guys like?
I kind of wish we had gotten that pick swap in 2030 and unprotected in 2031 from
that's an interesting trade by San Antonio.
Yeah.
The Timberwolves, man, they're really going for it with a young guy like that's a weird one. If you were gonna give up assets, giving them up for a guy who can't defend, who's small, I don't know. I as a Jazz fan, I'd like that for Minnesota, because I actually don't think that really helps them. But I don't know. Maybe Dillingham's gonna be freaking sick. But
well, to your point that you made earlier, Mark, about San Antonio wanting to win now, those are two really good assets now that they can put in a trade. And so I feel like that's valuable. Those first round picks, I just add that essentially to whatever that package looks like for whoever they're trying to bring in.
Yeah,
maybe that's what their mindset is there.
I gotta imagine the Jazz are thrilled with how this went. By the way, just knowing what I know about who they liked. But real quick, before the pick comes in, Zach Edey on Memphis is sick. I actually really like Edey. I came around on him late. Next, I think the landing spot in Memphis is awesome. He fits really well with all those guys, except for Ja Morant is a little bit weird just because he's going to clog the lane. But so they're going to lose some of that 5-out stuff. But I don't know. Maybe Edey can spread the floor a little bit more.
Yeah, I think if you commit to playing a certain way, and you dedicate him as your bench big, I think that it could work. And but you've got to commit to a certain play style, a certain tempo, a certain supporting structure. Let's see what the Jazz do here. Oh, looks like we're going to Cody.
Let's go, Cody Williams, the guy, the man. By the way, I'll just tell you, I know Josh is upset, but before we get to Josh on how pissed off he is here, the Jazz, I can tell you, the Jazz really liked Cody Williams. That's who they really wanted. That's who they were really wanting at 8, and then when they dropped to 10, they were very concerned that was not going to work out. So to get him here at 10, at least from the Jazz perspective, and I would agree with them on this, this is awesome. Like he was I think I had him number 4 on my big board, if I remember right. Number 4 just behind Castle. I love this pick. Like I don't know if this could have gone better for the Jazz. Devin Carter would have been really interesting, but I'm thrilled that we got him here. I can't believe he made it to 10. I mean that seemed almost impossible this morning. So I'm happy.
Let me pop in with the two things that got me excited about Williams, and then the one concern. Josh, you had mentioned the 17 3-pointers this year. Can't take anything away from that. So I expanded to just any jumper, any jump shot. He was actually in the 60th percentile among guards, 50th percentile among forwards. So that actually gave me some hope that there's some shooting to plumb, some shooting to develop there. I actually kind of liked him as a defender. I actually thought that he was more positioned or better positioned, especially against guards, than I would have thought. I thought he put himself into good position and was decently active. So, you put him as your, 2 guard or your kind of more ball in hand 3. I think some good things could come of that. But really he's not a strong passer, and he does do some off-ball cutting, but wasn't in high volume. He really liked to have the ball in hand. So there's some stuff to figure out for sure, but I'm generally optimistic, I think.
So I want to set the record straight. I hope that I haven't made it that I don't hate this pick. This isn't like the Jazz passing on Cam Whitmore last year. That one was unforgivable for me.
That is unforgivable, yeah.
So this is like I said, this is kind of a meh pick for me. It's I don't hate it. I don't love it. I guess the comment that I'll make, kind of like I said before, is it makes perfect sense. We've talked about this. Everybody's talked about this. What is the one hole in the Jazz's roster? Wing. They don't have a small forward, and so Cody fits the bill perfectly. He fits right in there with the roster. His length is awesome. Again, I just don't think I don't see necessarily the vision of him being whatever people envision him being, an all-star or like his brother. I think what I've kind of said before, and others have as well, if he's like 75, 80% of Jalen Williams of his brother, that's a win, right? I mean, that's great value at 10. If you look at past drafts of what kind of type of player you're getting at 10, if he can be that, that's awesome. So I think he fits there really well. He's just going to have to kind of prove it for me. Kind of like Taylor Hendricks. This feels like a Taylor Hendricks picks for me. It's like I wasn't really excited about that. I can see the tools with Hendricks, and he fits like we need a defensive playmaker there. But I think he could complement Taylor and Bryce and Keontae and some of these other guys that we have on roster really well.
Yeah. So let me try and sell you on him. I think his ceiling is Chris Middleton. I think he's got to get a little bit bigger. Obviously, he's a little bit undersized from his weight perspective. He's not as tall as I was hoping he was going to measure in at. So I'm hoping he continues to grow a little bit.
Do you remember what his measurables were, Mark? What he was without shoes?
I think he's 6'6" and a half without shoes.
Yep.
Is that right?
6'6" and a half.
So he's 6'8".
Plus six and a half.
I wish he was more like 6'7" and a half without shoes. So I'd love for him to add like another inch of height. And then he's got to bulk up, but he can do so many things on both ends of the floor. And honestly, like the number one thing I really love about him is his feel for the game and just his natural like basketball IQ is very, very high. And those guys with these kind of tools tend to not be a bust, and they tend to be a valuable player. Whether or not he reaches his ceiling of like a Chris Middleton, where he turns into like a primary or secondary offensive weapon, I'm not sure. Again, he's got to get a little bit bigger. Like Middleton's obviously a bigger guy than Cody Williams is, but he has that ability. Like he can score from all three levels. His shooting is not broken. He hasn't really shot at a high volume yet and been asked to do that, but the mechanics and the bones and the foundation are there. He's not an elite playmaker off the dribble for himself or for others, but he can do it, and he's shown flashes of it. He can get to the rim and finish. He has enough IQ to make plays for his teammates in transition out of the pick and roll, and he can handle the ball well enough to run the pick and roll a bit, which is huge for a wing. He makes good decisions, and he's a pretty good defender. Like he just does, like he just is kind of like the modern NBA wing that you want. Like he does a little bit of everything. I don't think he's going to get exposed on either end of the floor. Like I don't ever see a scenario where teams are leaving him wide open in the playoffs, nor do I see them attacking him on defense. Like maybe if he never adds any weight, they could do that because he just is too thin. But I do think he's going to bulk up. You just look at the genetics with his brother, Jalen Williams. Like he added significant weight as he got older too, right? And obviously it's slightly different build and player, but I think you can have faith that that's going to happen. I don't know. I think his floor, like if things go badly, is Corey Brewer, because he just never adds the weight or figures out how to be a better playmaker. But I would tend to think that he's going to be better than that. And again, Corey Brewer, like maybe people aren't thrilled about that floor, but also like functional, helpful player that played forever in the league and played for some decent teams. I don't think that's the worst case scenario at 10 in this kind of a draft. So if you get a guy with that kind of floor and then a ceiling of maybe a Chris Middleton, man, I'm thrilled about that. And just having a high IQ player that can fit in on multiple iterations of a team structure, I'm really excited about that. Again, number 4 player on my board. So, I mean, a tremendous value for the Jazz, in my opinion.
So I'll throw out some of the comps that I had made for him, and I'm curious to see what you guys think. In a if things go well scenario, I wondered if he could have kind of a Nick Batum type arc. Nicholas Batum. In an average scenario, I wondered if he could approximate some of what Trevor Ariza did in his early years. The shot wasn't quite there for Trevor, but he was really impactful kind of around the edges of the offense and then defensively. And then if things kind of go poorly, maybe Alec Burks, a jumbo Alec Burks.
I actually like that comparison maybe more than the others, and the only reason I say that is I think he's more talented off the dribble than like like an Ariza or some of those kind of like almost like 3-and-D kind of guys are. Like they really couldn't dribble, they couldn't do playmaking. And Cody Williams day one can for sure do that. Like maybe not at an elite level, but at a functional level. Like I actually think you'll see Cody Williams initiate and run some things in the offense where those guys like never could do that, right? And again, that's part of why I like him. Like you gotta have that on the wing. So A plus plus pick for the Jazz. I'm shocked. I don't think they expected him to make it this far, and I didn't. And so to get him, I'm thrilled about that.
So the comp that I had for Cody Williams is like a longer Wesley Matthews. And I think I buy your comments, Mark, about, or I think the appeal to him is he has a high floor. Again, that was the appeal with Taylor Hendricks last year, is he's a high floor player. I just don't buy his ceiling. I don't buy into him really hitting his ceiling like I don't with Taylor Hendricks. But you got to have those players, right? It's like you've got to have important role players that can. You need Wes Matthews. I mean, wasn't Wes Matthews on the team that won the championship in Milwaukee? You've got to have Trevor Ariza type players. You've got to have like these really good role players, and so it could potentially be, like I said before, really great value in terms of picking at 10 for the Jazz down the road. And so I buy into that.
All right, so Matas Buzelis headed to the hometown of Chicago. What are you guys thinking about this one? Is this a pretty good fit? Are you liking this? I know that in a vacuum, Mark, you were kind of fading Buzelis, but is this a little bit of hometown cooking? You know, getting a little pressure to bring the hometown kid home.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like the player that much. He's somebody. I mean, I kind of out of obligation still had him. I think I had him in my top 10 still. I think I had him at 10, right? Let me pull up my board. I had him at 9, right? Just because he's toolsy, right? But to me, this is like more of a Taylor Hendricks type pick where you're picking because of the tools. And I actually kind of maybe disagree with Josh on the Taylor Hendricks pick where you pick Hendricks because of the floor. I actually think that's more of a ceiling pick. And I think that's what you're hoping for with Buzelis is he's really raw, really young, really immature, doesn't really have like a clear NBA skill set, but the tools are there. And so you're just hoping you can help him develop and figure that out. Don't know if that's what Chicago can do for him. Like Chicago's just a weird team. But you know, like frankly, he kind of reminds me of Patrick Williams a little bit. And Patrick Williams has not really been much in Chicago. Like he's been very up and down. And so I don't know. To me, it's like Patrick Williams 2.0, and I don't know how to value that. Like I personally don't value Patrick Williams that much, and I just don't see Buzelis being much different than that. So I don't love it. Just not a fan of the player, so it makes it hard for me to like the fit anywhere, frankly.
Yeah, Josh, are you interested in commenting on Buzelis, or are you more interested in Oklahoma City Thunder here at 12, having just made a pretty big trade a few weeks ago to send Josh Giddey to the Bulls and bring in Alex Caruso, really rounding out their roster? Which direction would you like to go?
I can touch on both a little bit. I'll try and be brief, Adam. I agree with Mark. Mostly, I think what I'll say is I don't like the fit there. I feel bad for Buzelis because the Bulls are a mess. I agree with that. I don't know if that's really going to be a good spot for him. The reason, going back to kind of our disagreement with me and Mark on Hendricks, the reason why I don't buy Taylor Hendricks' ceiling is because he can't dribble the ball. Like he can't self-create, and so I don't buy. And we had talked about that a little bit last year too, Adam, when we picked him. That was always the big knock on Taylor Hendricks, and I really didn't see that much in development or improvement with that this past year. But that's one thing Buzelis can do. Like Buzelis can do things with the ball in his hands. He can dribble the ball. He can put it down. Is he the athlete that Taylor Hendricks is? No. Is he even close to the defender that Taylor Hendricks is? No. They're different players in that regard. So I think that it's probably more attainable for Buzelis to hit whatever his ceiling is. I think his ceiling's probably Gordon Hayward. Granted, tons of stuff is going to have to come around for Buzelis. Like he's going to have to shoot the ball way better. Like he's gonna have to prove that he is this dog, this player, this not intimidated, like he's kind of talking himself up to be. But that's kind of my feelings there on that. Um, in terms of Oklahoma City, like what a fabulous trade for them. Getting Alex Caruso, like fantastic fit for them. I think that's exactly what they need. I'm interested. I have no idea what they're going to do with this pick. I'm interested to see if that helps, if that adds to their roster there. But I guess what I'm most interested in, what I want to ask you guys, obviously let you lead this discussion, Adam, but I want to know, like, who do you want the Jazz to target if they trade, they consolidate their picks and move up to get? That's probably more what I'm interested in focusing going forward.
Yeah, that great thoughts. OKC right here, I might entertain Deron Holmes. For the Jazz later on, if they packaged picks or if they did something to kind of move into that late teens, early 20s type range, kind of looking at my board, I probably think a Johnny Furphy type would be pretty interesting as a connector. I think he could play that role pretty well. Brings in a lot of energy, can do some stuff on both ends. I think he'll be an average 3-point shooter, but those are only coming in really catch and shoot scenarios. And I think he can be a disruptor, connector, passing. So that might be something I entertain Johnny Furphy at that spot, but I don't know. I mean, I wonder if Bub Carrington keeps slipping, or if Dalton Knecht or Baylor Scheimar end up in the early 20s, I'd probably be totally fine taking them there.
This is a really interesting pick by Oklahoma City. This is not what I
Fascinating.
would have expected.
What do you think, Adam?
This was not anywhere near my bingo card. This was nowhere near my bingo card. I don't know perfectly what they're thinking here, other than just I think Sam Presti is just like,
He's got a type.
yeah, he has a type, and I think Sam Presti is just kind of like, yeah, we're good for the future, but we're also investing in the future as well. Like it's not just pairing things well to work great right now with Shea and Williams and Chet. It's also, hey, let's stow away some money in the bank that's going to return some interest maybe in 5 years.
So I'm curious because Topic was tied to the Jazz a lot, which, by the way, I had heard that they were not in on Topic, so I always thought that was kind of entertaining to see them connected to him so much. But I mean, I don't know. Like, would you guys have rather had Topic and gone that route versus a Cody Williams? How do you feel about that? He's kind of an interesting, a little bit of a polarizing player, right? Serbian Josh Giddey, without some of the off-court stuff that we won't get into on the stream. I don't know. What are your thoughts on him as a player overall?
Yeah, I know that he showed a little bit more off the bounce as a 3-point shooter than he did kind of catch and shoot. That didn't make me super. That didn't instill any more confidence in his shot for me. But I think he's a talented player getting into the paint and finishing at the rim. Good passer. But not good on the defensive end. From what I saw, I didn't like hardly any of it. And I thought the instances where he played hard at that end, looked good, but very, very few and far between. I prefer Cody Williams over Nikola Topic for the Jazz. And so I'm happy with the direction we went, personally.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, like I've said already, I'm lower on Cody than you guys are, than everybody in Jazz Nation is, but I'm even lower on Topic, and I have been really low on him for a long time. So I wouldn't have done that either. I wouldn't have taken Topic, however you want to say it, over Cody Williams as the Jazz front office. But I actually do like this pick for Oklahoma City in the sense that they're like, we don't care if he misses next year. Like, we're contending right now.
Yeah.
Like, he can rehab. Like, and if he really is BPA, I mean, a lot of people had him as a top 5 prospect in this draft. If that's the value that you're getting as an Oklahoma City Thunder organization at 12, like, I think I can see the thought process behind that, and I think it could pay pretty good dividends for them. And so I understand the logic there, but I'm glad that we're not taking it.
Yeah, the only weird thing for Oklahoma City is they are in a win now mode. So to essentially take a guy who's going to redshirt his first year and to take a guy who is pretty similar to the guy you just traded away because you couldn't play him in the playoffs is a little bit odd to me, right? Like, it just seems like
that last point especially is
it's like you literally just traded the guy because you were going to put him on the bench because you couldn't have him in the rotation for the playoffs, and that meant probably moving forward for the regular season. So why are you going to try and like do that again? I'm not a fan of Dalton Knecht, but it seems like maybe a guy like that could have brought in that shooting. And the immediate help would have made a lot of sense. Devin Carter, again, like another win now team that I feel like Devin Carter could have helped a lot. They passed on him. It makes me wonder if Devin Carter's got like a health thing or something going on. I just am shocked that he's fallen this far.
Well, they did come out and say today that he hurt his shoulder. He had a shoulder injury. I don't know why that would make any difference. That shouldn't change anything. That was my feelings kind of about Cam Whitmore last year, all the hocus pocus that came out about projecting him having knee problems in the future. I was like, that's just nonsense to me. But my thought process with taking Topic there is I guess the point I was trying to make is like, sure, we're going to draft a rookie, but I don't know if it really matters if it's Devin Carter or Dalton Knecht. Like, we're not going to play him. It's a rookie. Like, we just traded for Alex Caruso. He's like taking the place of a guy that couldn't play, and he's playable. So it's like we have our rotation set. We don't have our eyes necessarily set on rookies coming into our rotation. We're going to go out and make trades. Like, we are going to contend for the top seed in the West again and try and see if we can advance further. And like, a rookie isn't like going to move any needles for us there. Like, there's not going to be anybody that we plug in there. So we'll take Topic. Like, he can be an asset down the road, but like, I think to your point, like maybe Devin Carter would be the only one that I would buy.
Yeah, but like even some other guys like Furphy, I would have loved for them, or even Jacoby Walter, or it just feels like there was multiple guys there that could have helped him. I think Oklahoma City's got to be careful that they don't turn into Memphis, where you kind of think, oh, like we don't need to really force the issue and try and contend now. Like, teams are very fragile. I know it looks like it's inevitable right now until they win a championship, but I think they need to be careful and not try and delay contending more seriously. Like, they got bounced. Like, it's not like they really, I know they're the number 1 seed kind of by accident in some ways, and they got bounced a little early. Like, I don't know if they're maybe as good as they think they are. They should probably be a little bit more aggressive. But
well, aren't they better with that move that they just did in trading for Caruso? Doesn't that automatically make them better?
I talked about this on Twitter. I like Caruso. I don't think that puts them over the top. Like, is he the difference between them beating the Nuggets or the Timberwolves or even the Mavericks? I don't think so. Like, I think it makes them better, but does it make them that much better? Like, you go from second round to finals better? I don't think it does.
But I agree with you on that.
Are you saying then, Mark, that they should entertain bidding for a 7-foot fringe player?
Let me just say that pick should have been a Jazz pick right there. We could have had Devin Carter, who just went to the Sacramento Kings, Cody Williams. I would have been thrilled.
Jazz would have gone 2 for 2 for you.
Yeah, we would have gone 2 for 2, and we would have had another treasure trove of picks. I mean, I can tell you, like, if Oklahoma City calls us up about a Lowry trade and they're like, hey, like, Topic is part of the deal, I'd be like, yeah, you guys blew it. You should have. I'm not interested. You should have picked somebody else or just gave us that pick before. But yeah, it's Sacramento, Devin Carter, my guy. I love this fit. Again, I feel like I've said this like 5 times now. If you're a win now team, which Sacramento is, I feel like Devin Carter is like such a sick fit, and him next to Fox, they kind of need a guy like this, a little bit more defensive oriented. Is going to hustle and get the rebounds. I mean, this is what Devin Carter does, and he's not a liability on offense. Like he can still shoot. Love this landing spot for Carter, and love it for the Kings.
Yeah, this is really sad for Davion Mitchell because this means he is out of Sacramento because that's essentially Carter is filling that role. He's bigger version, probably better offensive version. Devin Carter right now is probably what they hoped Davion Mitchell would have turned into, which it hasn't panned out there. And so, yeah, that fits perfectly. I agree. But again, that's Steph Castle, Reed Sheppard, Devin Carter. They're kind of like, doesn't really matter where they play. Like they're winners. They're going to be good fits wherever you put them. And so, everybody needs a player like this kid.
Probably just good that he didn't slide all the way to Miami and then become a freaking all-star. With how hard he plays and stuff, they would have probably turned him into a monster. So, Josh, one of your big guys for this draft, someone you thought had probably the best value given where he would likely be taken, Collier. Who might you be if you were the Jazz talking to, and be comfortable trying to trade up to grab Collier?
Well, it sounds like they've been in conversations with Phoenix at 22, and in my opinion, that's kind of what the value is with those picks. Some people are saying that the Jazz could get as high as 17 or 18. There's been some disagreement there. I know that I'm kind of probably alone in Jazz Nation in my love for Isaiah Collier, and especially my fit or his fit next to Keontae. Like a lot of people they're not attracted to that pick at all. The reason why my hot take earlier in the season was that I said that Isaiah Collier had a higher ceiling than Scoot Henderson. That's kind of how I view Isaiah, so I am extremely high on him. I'd love for the Jazz to just take a swing on him because I think he probably has the highest ceiling in the draft. But I'm not really confident that the Jazz are going to go that direction at all. I don't see that really happening.
By the way, I actually like that take because, frankly, Collier and Scoot have similar strengths and weaknesses, but Collier's bigger and maybe not like such an explosive vertical athlete as Scoot, but he's just bigger and he's going to translate better to the NBA because of that, right? That was the big concern I had with Scoot last year. I think I was pretty vocal about after seeing him in the Rising Stars game in Utah. I was like, dude, Scoot is shockingly small. He looks big on film, and then you saw him in person, and I was like, oh boy, and as soon as I saw him in person, I was like, I'm much lower on Scoot now. So I like that take. It would be sick if we could turn Jordan Clarkson into Isaiah Collier if the Lakers want to play ball at 17. I would love that for that.
Or Bub Carrington, but that dream is gone because he just went to Washington.
Yeah, that's right. So this pick was originally owned by Portland, and in the deal that sent Denny Avdia from Washington to Portland, this 14th pick and Malcolm Brogdon are heading to Washington. I think that this is a really, really solid pick for Washington. Again, they need players who provide impact, and I really like this for them. It's starting to shape up as something with some potential for that roster.
Well, this makes me like the Alex Sarr pick better because I actually think Carrington's a really good fit next to Sarr. And Josh, I'll let you go off here on Carrington, but I think you and I are both aligned here. We both really like the player, and good talent pickup, good value for Washington here.
I agree. Mark. The point I was going to say was that I think Washington's future would look so much better if they wouldn't have made that stupid trade. You've got Bub, you've got Denny, you've got Sarr. That's a great young core, in my opinion, going forward. I think you can kind of debate the value. I think they probably got really good value back in trading Denny, but I don't know why you trade a young piece when you're trying to rebuild. I think their young core would have been great. Obviously, it still is good with Bub and Sarr, but if you've got Denny there as well, Kuzma, which it sounds like they're going to do. Move Jordan Poole, like rebuild with these young players and keep Denny.
Yeah, they really need to get rid of Poole. Poole's just a disaster. Like the epitome of a Washington Wizard player, and like not in a good way. And like, yeah, just brutal. But it was such a weird trade. Like I saw that one come across. I didn't like it for either team. It was like the rare double L. I'm like, Portland, I think you gave up way too much, and Washington, I also don't understand why you did it, because like it's just super weird. But I like Bub Carrington. Josh and I both were much higher on him than consensus before he kind of had his rise. So kind of fun to see him go.
Yeah.
Where we had kind of had him pegged early. So
Also,
Josh.
another guy who isn't too far away from his hometown, Baltimore kid. So now he'll be just down the road.
That's cool.
Washington. Yeah.
Yeah. Jordan Poole's gonna hate him, by the way. Jordan Poole's gonna turn into Draymond and punch Bub Carrington in practice now. He's gonna...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're not a great fit because they're both shot takers, right?
Yeah,
but that's why I've always kind of really liked Bub, is he's so unique in the sense that he is a shot taker like Poole, but he's the complete antithesis of him as well, because he's such a good floor general and playmaker, and he has just incredible vision, and he has fantastic feel for the game, which is not Jordan Poole at all. And so, like, to your point, it's like, yes, get Jordan Poole far away from Bub Carrington and the Washington Wizards. It's like, give Bub the reins with Alex Sarr. Like, you've got a great foundation there and build on that. Same thing with Kyle Kuzma. But to the point Mark made earlier, at one point in the season, probably like in December, I had Bub Carrington in my top 5 on my board. Like, I saw it really early with Bub. I mean, I was like, this guy looks like a junior senior out there. He's 18 years old. Like, how is he so poised, so mature, like so careful with the ball? He doesn't turn it over. Like, he's telling guys where to go on the court, where to be. Like, he looks like a leader and a veteran out there, and he's a freshman in like a big time conference. Like, I was so impressed with him. And to Mark's point that he made earlier, I'm glad that everybody else kind of came around on him and that he's getting the due that he deserves. I think he's the thing that I'm worried about with Bub is like he's not a good athlete, but like we talked about with Tidjane Salaün, like his length I think is going to make up for that. It's like, okay, Tidjane's not a great athlete, Bub's not a great athlete, but they're huge positionally at size wise, and so I think that's going to be okay. But I'm interested to see like what can Bub do around the rim? Can he break the paint? Like can he overcome some of those things? And Sam Vecini did an awesome film session with him where he talked about how he was so much smaller in high school, and so he never really could get into the paint. He's had this really late growth spurt, and so it might not be a huge issue. He's just learning how to essentially adjust to his size, his body now, and that will come for him. But that'll be kind of fascinating to watch with Bub in the NBA.
Yeah, like if he had Collier or Ron Holland's ability to get to and finish at the rim, like he might have been the number 1 pick.
Yep.
And like, but some of that too is like he is the mid-range assassin. Like his mid-range game is sick, and so I think some of that is he can just afford to settle to not get to the rim because he's so good from the mid-range. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how he develops. He was one of those guys like I feel like every year there's a guy like this for me where I watched him and then like, and I never on my first watch I never look at the consensus boards. Like I don't look up Gavoni's rankings or anybody else's rankings. I always want to watch everybody first and then like grade them myself and then go check. And he was one of those guys like graded out. I think he started on my initial watch. He started like somewhere in the 12 to kind of 15 range. For me, he ended up 17 on my board ultimately, but not too far off where I started him. And I remember coming back from that watch and then checking the boards, and I was like, what the heck? Like he was like,
why is he in the 40s? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on? I was like, and you just started going through the list, like all the things that you touched on. It was just like, what more do you want? Like he's young, he's tall, he's long, he can pass, he can shoot, he can create, he can like. I'm like, what? Isn't this like what you want in a modern guard? So I'm glad teams kind of wised up to that. I was shocked. Gavoni had him in like the 40s for like the longest time. I think even once the college season ended, he was still in the 40s on his board, and like really didn't get pushed up until the combine, which very bizarre to me. But yeah, love the player.
what impressed me when he got to Pitt is he joined a guard line that had that guy Blake Hinson, senior guard. You know, he was gonna shoot a lot, and Bud just seamlessly integrated himself there, got the trust of the senior guard, and developed this nice give and take between those two. And I thought that just really spoke to some of his character, just how he approaches the game too, to fit in nicely with this senior guard. Um, so from the standpoint of Bub coming for Poole's gig, there's obviously tension there, but I was impressed with Bub, you know, coming into a situation where there might have been kind of something similar and him just fitting in seamlessly and showing how portable he is.
That's actually a really good point, Adam. I forget the other player's name, but they had two really big time players. Leggett was the other player on Pitt that they were big time scorers. Leggett was a shooter, and Hinson. And you're right, he did fit seamlessly, and so that 1 year might end up helping him a ton, especially if Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole are still on that roster.
So interesting pick from Miami here, going with
I love this pick.
Going with Ware. This has some kind of real potential for them, I think. You like this one, Mark? Why don't you talk?
Yeah,
a little bit about
he was
it?
my best available player left on my board. I had him on my board, my personal board, at 11. I understand the concerns. He again, ironically, kind of has a little bit of shades of Hassan Whiteside, where you're like, the talent is disgusting, but so is his like commitment to basketball and like playing hard.
The
It's like
apathy.
questionable whether or not he actually loves the game and is like gonna grind and make it happen. And he's had a very interesting college career in regards to that. I mean, he transferred from Oregon, and he had a lot of questions coming into this year, but undeniable talent. Like in terms of just raw talent, uh, personally, I would have put him number one on my board pretty easily. Like his talent level is disgusting. Um, he plays soft, and he's just struggled with that. And for a big guy, a center at his size, to play soft, like he's one of those guys who's a center with guard skills and plays like a guard. I mean, that's just tough in the NBA with grown up adults. And like, how is he going to match up against a Jokic or a Joel Embiid? But man, dude, his talent. I mean, he can shoot, he can dribble, he can pass, he can protect the rim. His highlight reel, which they're going through right now, is disgusting. He just is extremely talented. So I love the landing spot because Miami, with the culture that they have, they're gonna get him to play, right? Honestly, just like they did with Whiteside. It's like you don't have the option of being lazy in Miami. I think it's a really kind of weird fit with him and Bam because they're both kind of centers that space the floor. But Bam has a little bit more of an ability to be that enforcer than Ware does. And I honestly, I think Bam's maybe one of the best kind of mentors he can have. If he figures it out, like he's a Chet Holmgren type of talent. Like, and maybe that's a hot take, but insane talent level. So I classic Miami pick. Like, just take the insane talent and trust your culture to help figure that out. And if he does that, I mean, he's gonna be a problem.
This is a real validation that a bit of a subpar impact season at Oregon and trying and not forcing it in what was a pretty exciting class. Going to a different situation in Indiana, refocusing and then trying again in a draft class that's a little bit more open. Really paid dividends because yeah, I think Miami's a great landing spot.
Yeah. At one point, I had him like fifth on my board. Like his talent, I know I keep saying that, but I just hope people realize like his talent is the real deal. I mean, uh, so very very interesting, very polar. I was really interested to see where he was going to go because I was certainly much higher on him than consensus, and there was a risk that I was going to have my 11th player on my board drop to like the late 20s. So I was really curious to see how that plays out. So I'll take 15 and have him go to Miami. I like that a lot.
So I just seen a tweet from Woj that he had put out several minutes ago when the Kings ultimately selected Devin Carter, but he had mentioned that they were in some talks of trading that number 13 pick. Because of whom they went with, Devin Carter, we had talked about him being portable to a lot of teams and being available for some instant impact. I do wonder if that is a hey, we could take this guy and those talks can still advance before they inevitably have to formally sign the drafted player. At which point a trade wouldn't be able to happen until later in the season.
Yeah. And I still just love that fit. Like if I was the Kings, I would have done exactly that. Like let's just take the value, and then like we're either happy to keep the player or we can talk more, right? And it was a clear value at that point too. So I would assume that's who a lot of the teams were moving up for. I can't imagine teams are going to be moving up for any of these guys that are still here. But Dalton Knecht dropping. I mean, he was projected to go like top 7 a lot, right? And we're all the way here at 16. I'm a known hater, so I'm like not opposed to this drop, but
Yeah, I kind of predicted this. Like, I thought he was probably the most probable. I'm aligned with you. I didn't really see why he would necessarily be. I was like, I think he's going to slide out of the lottery. But the guy that's sliding out of the lottery that I'm surprised is Jared McCain.
yeah.
What do you guys feel about the Jazz moving up to get McCain or Collier? Or I know that you said Furphy, Adam, and he's still there, right? What do you think, Mark? What do you want the Jazz to do?
Yeah, I think I said this a couple times on Twitter. I weirdly was kind of more excited for their later round picks than the pick at 10, and that was in large part because I didn't think a Cody Williams would drop to them, so I'll eat my crow on that. But that being said, like, so I've kind of been anti trade up because I really actually like the depth in this class, and I like the idea of taking 2 swings later because I feel like kind of this range of the draft that we're getting in is pretty like flat. Like the guys here, I like just about as much as the guys I think we can get later. So I'm kind of like, I just rather have 2 swings in the same tier than 1. But that being said, I mean, I wouldn't trade up for Knecht, but a Collier, a Furphy. I'm a big Tyler Smith guy, but I know people are lower on him too.
I love Tyler Smith.
Like those are interesting guys, and like if you don't want to have too many young players on the team, maybe or frankly like. What would be ideal is if you could just call up the Lakers and send them freaking Jordan Clarkson and get one of these guys instead. Like I'd love to turn Jordan Clarkson into even Knecht, who I'm lower on, but like I would take that over Jordan Clarkson moving forward. But like or a Collier or a Furphy, I would love that. So if I'm the Jazz, I'm pretty actively exploring my options here in this range, and especially for Clarkson, these are teams in this range, like even the 76ers. We got the Knicks going to be coming up here down the road a little bit further, but I don't know. I'd be poking around and seeing what's available there.
So who are your guys though, Mark? If you don't want to trade up at 29 and 32, who are you chomping at the bit for the Jazz to get at those spots?
Ryan Dunn, baby, right?
Yeah, Ryan Dunn, dude. I love Ryan Dunn.
No,
I know he's a trap. I know it, but I would trade up for him.
You can't play him in the playoffs.
Maybe, but the thing with Ryan Dunn, and we'll talk about him later, I'm sure, but he's just such an awesome athlete, incredible defender. He has the single most elite skill in the whole draft with his defense. I'm such a sucker for those guys, like elite athletes with elite defense. He's kind of got some Kirilenko type defense to him, and Kirilenko's like my all-time favorite player. So I'm like, I don't know, like I'm falling in love. And the thing is, like in high school, he actually was pretty good on offense and could shoot. I don't know what happened to him at Virginia. But part of me still thinks that he can get rehabbed on his shooting and be a decent enough spot-up shooter that he can at least survive. And then his defense is just so valuable, and his athleticism. And again, the Jazz just don't have a history of having really athletic wings. So I'm just more prone to being like, let's just gobble up all those guys, even if they have issues, and I'll just take it. But Furphy would be another guy I'd really love. But to try and answer your question of guys later on, like other than been done. I know the Jazz really love Kolek. That's been pretty well known. But like Juan Nunez or Duricic, even guys like Ajinta or AJ Johnson, like some of those younger guys with higher upside.
What do you think about Daddier?
Yeah, him too. Like I would love him. I think he's probably going to go a little higher, but he's another guy that I would be very, very interested in for sure.
So I spent the Philadelphia 76ers go with Jared McCain. But I've been spending the last few minutes Googling who is Dalton Knecht's agent, because ESPN just spent 5 minutes with everybody's jaw drop saying, how on earth is this dude falling? And Jonathan Givony is beside himself. And I'm like, who's Dalton Knecht's agent getting into Givony's text messages?
Dude, Givony's been on the Knecht train this whole time, too. He's been pushing that so hard.
Is he a Rich Paul guy? Is that why he's getting all this ESPN time?
Probably. I love this pick,
couldn't find anything formal, but that's what immediately came to my mind when this whole panel is just losing their mind over Dalton McCain falling, and it's just like, really, we're shocked by this?
Yeah, that's like
even if you
thing.
Like him, like this isn't shocking.
No.
Yeah, like, well, on one hand, the dude is old, can't play defense, so like probably shouldn't be shocked. The other thing is, like, it was known that this draft was going to have some guys that were going to fall because it's a weird draft. So it's like, how shocked can you really be? I don't know. Like, to me, it's like, this might be the least shocking part of the draft so far, is that Knecht is falling.
Absolutely.
So, Jared McCain, David Locke's guy, going to Philadelphia. I like McCain. I was worried we were going to maybe be interested at 10. Because I didn't like him that much, but I love the fit for Philly. They need a guy like him to space the floor. They need kind of another guard next to Maxey.
Yeah, he fits perfectly there.
Yeah,
and just another place they won't have to try to allocate or be tempted to allocate all that cap space that they have this summer. They can devote bigger fish to fry there.
Don't know if I love Jared McCain Instagram influence combined with Joel Embiid. That's gonna get really, really annoying really quick. And I don't know if Philly's gonna love McCain pulling Embiid into that stuff, but I like the player fit.
But I think I buy the take that there's a chance that Jared McCain, after all is said and done, comes out as the best shooter in this draft. So that's fantastic value for Philly, and everybody needs shooters space the floor.
Who was it we were talking about earlier? One of these other guards we were kind of comping to Fred VanVleet. Jared McCain is the guy I actually always thought reminded me of Fred. I think he's got that upside potential in him. He's that good of a shooter. He's kind of built like Fred VanVleet. If he can kind of do some of the creation stuff that Fred can do, I don't think that's out of the question for him. And that would be a great kind of skill set fit for what Philly needs.
So this is pretty interesting. Looking at all of our top remainings, the first two for each of us that are still remaining, Isaiah Collier and Dalton Knecht. We'll really be curious how far those slide. Like, yes, on the one hand, you have ESPN losing their mind over Knecht, but on the other hand, you haven't heard a peep from the broadcast about Collier.
Yeah.
Right. Many have even had him going kind of in the early 20s. I think we all agree that would be tremendous value right there.
Wouldn't surprise me. Like, I do kind of wonder if the Lakers, just seems like a Lakers pick, a little bit USC, splashy. Yeah. He's got the USC connection. It is way more surprising that he's falling. Like, I get, like, he can't shoot and, like, whatever. But at one point early in the season, Givony had him as the number one player in this class. He was number one on the board for a good while. And he was the number one player coming out of high school, right? He was number one over Ron Holland. So it's not like the dude is lacking in talent or, like, renown. He's got the pedigree. It is kind of interesting that nobody's even talked about him.
Well, it's funny because I think Givony has kind of been the biggest culprit in damaging, like, his image. Like, he did a bunch of hit pieces on him earlier with some video stuff. Actually, the biggest thing that was, like, there was some character issues and some off court, some, like, coachability like concerns that people had. A lot similar to, I've made a lot of parallels with Cam Whitmore to Isaiah Collier, like just fantastic athletes, very young, high upside, high ceiling, and they've kind of just fallen. Like Cam was top 3, top 5 guy in my opinion. Isaiah Collier, same thing. Obviously, they're different build, they play different position, but um, I haven't understood that at all. Like whoever gets him, in my opinion, is getting the Cam Whitmore of this draft. Like, how did Houston get Cam at 20? I think we're going to say the exact same thing about Collier.
Yeah, I like that comparison. I'm lower on Collier than I was on Whitmore. Like I understand this fall a little bit more than I understood the Whitmore fall, but I like that kind of comparison and thinking of, hey, elite talent in many ways, like has the warts, and is probably falling farther than he should. To me, this is about the right range for him. This is really good value, but I don't know. We'll see. It would suck if the Lakers picked him. I know the pick is in, so we'll find out here in a second. But I just hate the Lakers, and I'd hate for them to get a talent like that.
It's hilarious to see Adam Silver, announcing these picks like an hour and a half after, they've been like, reported on Twitter, and he's still saying to be finalized later. It's great.
But I guess this pick makes so much sense now.
Oh yeah, random Midwest white dude going to the Lakers and suddenly doing well. Absolutely.
It's like, why is all of this ESPN coverage been on Dalton Knecht? Oh, he's tied with the Lakers. Now it makes sense.
Yes.
They knew. They knew this whole time.
Yeah.
Those schemers. All right, Dalton Knecht to the Lakers. I'm a hater, and I hate the Lakers, so this is great for me. But I actually like this fit because
absolutely, yeah.
Next to LeBron, like having a shooter of his ilk to toss the ball to, and Knecht, I can get into all the things I hate about him, but he does compete. Like he's a gamer, right? He's super competitive and has that kind of nasty edge to him. Now, does that show up on defense? Absolutely not, because he's atrocious on defense. But I don't know, like that kind of fits like the Lakers' obnoxious kind of brand. Like they get these guys that like to talk and be loud and whatever, but aren't actually that good. So, kind of a nice little fit there. Kind of like that for the Lakers.
Yeah, if he brought the power and passion for the game that he brings on offense to defense, I think he could like really compete, as an average defender against forwards. Not against quicker guards, but some forwards. But yeah, he just appears to be engaged at a far different level. And he had mentioned that part of the reason he went to Tennessee was to be challenged more defensively. And I thought to myself, were you challenged more defensively?
He probably
not in a good way. Yeah.
I do think JJ Redick is far more equipped to use Dalton in high leverage situations where he can succeed than Darvin Ham.
That's a good point.
Last year. So I actually think that could be pretty darn successful, that pairing from the get go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, Adam. The only problem is JJ's probably going to get fired in 2 years, so we don't know how long he's actually going to stay there, and he's playing on a team with LeBron, and so who knows how much of the shots JJ's actually going to be calling. But if JJ can stay there, like, yes, I mean, that's like the perfect role model mentor to have for Dalton Knecht to start his NBA career, right?
The funny thing about that is part of the reason I was lower on Knecht is I was often saying he's going to be more. I never used the JJ Redick comparison, but he's going to be more like that kind of a guy where he's a specialty shooter and like that's kind of it. Like not a good defender. He's atrocious on defense, and he's never been good on defense. He wasn't good at Tennessee. He wasn't good at Northern Colorado against much less, much more inferior competition. Like I just do not buy that an old player who's like 24 years old is all of a sudden going to be a good defender in the NBA when he couldn't guard Northern Colorado people, right? But he is an elite shooter, and but he's overrated off the dribble. He's an overrated playmaker in my opinion. He is much more of a specialty shooter like a Corver or a JJ Redick or whatever. And so like weirdly good fit because JJ Redick's going to know how to use him. and like make the most out of that, but also like he's going to be a much more limited player than I think people expect. Like I just don't see him being a ball handler, like even primary, secondary, or third like level ball handler and playmaker. I don't see that for him in the NBA, right? So
some of the more optimistic comparisons that I had thought of was like Bogdanovich.
yeah, see, and I just don't think he can ever like Bogdanovich can play defense, and Knecht just cannot do that at all. And he's smaller, right? Like he's only 6'5", something like that, and without shoes. So he's really like a shooting guard size. He's not a wing, and so he's not gonna be able to defend up into the small forward, power forward positions. Like he's just not gonna have that versatility. And he's certainly not gonna be able to defend point guards either. Like that again, I'm a hater, so I'm like kind of going off on it, but like I understand where you're coming from that side, but that was also part of I kept hearing that kind of comparison. I'm like, yeah, but he just cannot defend, like, and he's not big, and he's not that versatile, like, you know. But if you're trying to be optimistic, I could see that, but it's hard to be optimistic that he's going to improve across that many vectors when he's so old, in my opinion. But you know.
That's a good point. You definitely are a hater. Go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, it does sometimes shock me how seemingly atrocious defenders suddenly get into a product of their environment. They are a product of the environment they're in, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, you're passable? Wow, you're average? That was unthinkable, you know? So I wonder if he's that type where, and I not suggesting that the Lakers are where he's going to be a product of his environment defensively, but I wonder if that is seen at some point in his career where, as you're saying, for the large portion of it, you know, he's rated as a bottom tier defender.
That is the really weird thing too, right? About the Laker fit is they really needed more defense and they just got worse defensively. So a little bit odd there. Orlando, I really like this pick with De Silva. De Silva, another older guy. I kind of regret not having De Silva above Knecht in my rankings, to be honest. I like him a lot more. He's way more versatile. But you know, good fit for Orlando. Trying to win now a little bit more. They need a little bit more experience and some more adults in the room with that young core that they have, and they kind of needed a wing like this, right? So. Really like the pick for Orlando here with De Silva.
Yeah, with De Silva, you get 3 more inches in height, similar frame. Dalton is a little heavier, but similar age too. And what Orlando probably wants from De Silva is honestly probably less needed from day one than what the Lakers probably need.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Colorado games this year, and I don't like Colorado players this year. No offense to Alec Burks, I love Alec Burks, but like Tristan Da Silva, I'm so low on. KJ Simpson, really? I'm low on. Cody Williams, I'm low on. Like there's like no pop. Like again, and I'm kind of biased towards athletes. Like that's why I love Isaiah Collier. That's why I like Cam Whitmore's. But it's like. These guys they're not athletes. Like I felt like De Silva was like really slow, like methodical. And so it's just like, I mean, that's kind of funny that he's going to where Joe Ingles is. But I just don't know if they're going to make it in the league. Like, can you get your shot off quick enough? Like, can you beat superior athletes? Like, I don't know if he's necessarily an NBA player. But granted, I've been kind of on the other spectrum of De Silva. Consensus, I just haven't been able to understand because consensus is with Mark and like everybody loves De Silva and I've just never understood it. Like there's just nothing there that jumps out to me. Like I'm kind of flipped with Knecht. Like I could see maybe higher outcomes. I was higher Knecht. Like I could see him maybe turning into a Tyler Hero, maybe turning into like a Devin Booker light, like a light. But like I don't really see it. I don't see it with De Silva at all. It's like I like fall asleep watching Colorado. It's like so boring.
Put it out on the internet. Josh hates big basketball players.
It's like,
No,
and it's just like,
I thought the Devin Booker light was pretty good.
I mean, that better be as light as it can get. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about like Astrogel light on Devin Booker there for Knecht,
but yeah, we're definitely on different sides of the spectrum with Knecht there. But I mean, at this point, it's like, I don't feel that bad about my De Silva take. It's like, how many guys at 17, 18, like really pan out in the NBA? Like, is he really going to make a difference maker? It's like, I know people are high on him, but it's like, I don't buy it.
The only thing with De Silva, again, me trying to sell you on him, and we're gonna have to have a talk because I actually really like KJ Simpson too. He's somebody I wouldn't mind the Jazz getting with one of these later picks. But the thing is, I just think his floor is higher. Maybe his ceiling's not as high as Knecht because Knecht has the kind of nuclear offensive skill set at times. But I think the floor is higher with De Silva because De Silva can defend and can make plays off the dribble and can pass and like has a better overall impact on the game. And again, is more of a modern wing. Like he's taller, he's longer, he's more versatile. And so I just feel like he could really quickly and easily plug into just about every team in the NBA. And you don't really have to like game plan around his weaknesses. He can just fit in to your game plan and whatever you're doing with whatever players you have. Whereas Knecht, I feel like you have to like hide him on defense and you have to specifically run certain sets for him on offense to get him in a position to succeed. Where like De Silva, I can do that. Like I can run specific things for him, but I don't have to, and he's still going to be a positive impact player. So, but I get it. Like maybe more boring in some ways, but to me, I just think everybody could use De Silva on their team. Like everybody needs a two-way wing like him, and that's part of why I really like him.
Well, one of us is probably going to be wrong. I guess, again, the funny thing about Colorado sports this year, it's like their football team was the complete opposite. Everybody was tuning in to watch Colorado with Deion Sanders like they sucked, but it was like that was like exciting. And then it's like, again, Colorado, I'm like falling asleep watching them. It's like I don't buy into this team. But it's like I see De Silva being like a Morris Almond or a Johnny Juzang or just like somebody that just like never comes out of the G League for like the Jazz or things like that. They don't ever make it in the league. Like it's just they're not moving any needles. They can't find a place there just because they don't have the athleticism. They don't give a team enough. But anyway, we're far away on our evaluations of these guys.
I like it. And it's funny. It's funny because you and I sometimes are really aligned on guys, and then we're off. But we're often like very opposite on other ones. So it's like but it's good because it makes I think we're a good balance to how we see the game for each other, and it's part of why I always appreciate conversations with you because you really kind of push me to really think about my opinions and evaluations on some of these players because you see some of them just much differently, which is really helpful.
It's also super representative of what likely these front offices and their scouting departments are. You'll have some real strong alignment on some prospects, and then you'll just see some polar opposite views on others. And that's what really enriches the analysis and the conversation, and ultimately raises all boats over the course of hopefully what's a successful scouting and front office department for multitudes of years.
Talking about like major disagreements though, I'm just watching the feed, the TV coverage. They have Keyshawn George over Isaiah Collier on Best Available. Is that what I saw? That is like literally malpractice level insanity. Like, are you kidding me? Freaking George! I have him like in the 40s. Like, talk about a guy that needs to be in the 40s. It's that guy. Oh my gosh!
There's
over Isaiah Collier. Oh.
There's an odd little faction of Jazz fandom who is really, really in on Keyshawn George.
They love Keyshawn. Yeah.
I don't get that at all.
I'm not part of that faction at all. Again, talking about like boring fall asleep players, like no athleticism, no speed, no wiggle, no ball and hand skills. It's like Keyshawn George can make it in the league, but it's only going to be because of one reason. He just shoots the heck out of the ball and stands in the corner. But it's like, I don't see what else that he can do. And so I don't really understand the love there. But I love this pick for Toronto. This is a guy that hasn't gotten a ton of buzz. And I think we were kind of talking about Jacoby the other day on Twitter. Mark, I know that you kind of had fallen on him a little bit, and I think that pretty much everybody had. I think Jacoby started higher in the kind of the earlier in the season. But I like this fit for Jacoby. I think that he could fit in really well with Toronto, kind of their younger core moving forward. He needs to put the ball in the bucket a lot more. Like, he needs to show that he can defend a lot better. But I think he's the type of guy that he has the potential and the ceiling to score like 20 points a game in the NBA if everything works out for him.
Yeah, I've had an interesting relationship with him throughout the process. Going into my first watch, I thought I was going to love him. Like, I actually had him as one of the guys I was like, okay, I really want this guy on the Jazz. And then I watched him, and I came away super disappointed. He was way more limited on offense than I was expecting. He's another one of these guys who I think is almost exclusively like a specialist shooter right now. He's really not very good off the dribble, especially in getting to and finishing at the rim. He plays a lot softer there than you would like. Really bad on defense. Again, I thought he was going to be a better defender. Like, he puts up some numbers on steals, but it's mostly just like, I don't know, kind of junky plays where he gets steals. On-ball defense, he's really quite bad. He's like a decent athlete, but not as good as you might think. Again, limited ball handler. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think he's really limited. So I dropped him way down my board throughout the process. This is about the range that I think makes sense for him. But he's got a lot more work to do. And then his shooting just fell off a cliff. Like, that was his one skill set, and he just completely cratered down the stretch and was just not good. So I don't know. I don't know if I am a hater, but certainly much lower on him than I think a lot of other people were. And I just think he's much more limited and a lot further away than maybe a lot of people wanted to admit to themselves on him. But yeah.
Initially, when I was seeing him mocked kind of earlier in the process in the 7, 8, 9, 10 range, I kind of had some preconception on him, and digging into the film and the stats, I was surprised. Oh, he's not quite as good a shooter as I had preconceived. And then I noticed, oh, he's actually not getting to the rim or finishing well there.
Yeah.
And then I saw, oh, wait, he's actually not creating any of his own shots. And that kind of really made me question, oh, is he really kind of mid-lottery talent?
Yeah. Yeah, and that is exactly the experience I had, right? Like, it was kind of like reputation hype, and then you actually get into the film and you're like, wait a second, there's like so many problems here. Yeah, but I mean, he's toolsy though. Like, he's what, 6'4", 6'4.5-ish, and he's got, I think, something like a 6'10" wingspan. I mean, he's not a bad athlete. He's just not maybe elite. So I kind of thought of him as, like, I think his ceiling outcome in my mind is more of like a Tim Hardaway Jr., which, again, that's a guy that was on a finals team and was really helpful. But he's got to defend better. He's got to shoot better. I mean, that's how Tim Hardaway Jr. kind of came about to be what he is, as a valuable role player. But he's not, again, a guy that can play in the playoffs because he's not going to get exposed on both ends of the floor. He has his limitations, but can do some stuff for you. And I just don't. He's not there right now, but he could get there. And so, again, don't hate that, especially at this stage of the draft. Like, if you can get a Tim Hardaway Jr., great. Like, I think you'd be pretty happy with that. But he's got a ways to go to get to that level, I think.
Yeah, my comp for him was kind of a similar type player. Was like a Grayson Allen. He's not nearly the defender that Grayson is. But he's a lot younger than Grayson was when Grayson kind of came into the league. And I think the one thing that Jacoby is, we've kind of picked him apart a little bit here, but I think the one thing that Jacoby does have for him is his shot volume. And so, I mean, he's not afraid to take shots, big shots, like those kind of shots, a lot like Bub Carrington in a way. He's definitely not the mid-range shooter. He's not an off-the-bounce shooter like Bub is in any way. But I think a lot of people are less concerned about the percentages right now with Bub and with Walter because they're willing to take them. They're young. They're 18, 19 years old. I think a lot of people will think those percentages will go up. And even if they don't, I mean, the one value that Luka Doncic has is he just takes a ton of threes, right? Luka's not a good three-point shooter, but there is value in the volume. And if he can make 35, 36% at the volume that he would shoot at, like, that's okay. But again, it's hard to only bank on that with a lot of the other concerns that you guys have talked about, but where he's at in this draft, and if he can kind of get to that point, then that's fantastic value for where you're picking him at.
Yeah. And the volume thing is underrated. Like, I actually think that's a skill to be able to do something at a high volume. And to me, in many ways, and this is where I always had a bone to pick with David Locke in some of his analysis, like he was always so caught up on efficiency and he would always overlook volume. In many ways, I'd rather a guy start with high volume and then from there I can improve his efficiency. But it's really hard to take a guy, like, especially in a different vector here on like pick and roll, ball handling, and playmaking. You can take a guy who runs, is capable, has the underlying foundational skill set to run a lot of pick and rolls at a high volume, who maybe isn't great at it yet. You can then take that foundation of skills and make it better over time. But trying to take a guy who's never done a high volume pick and roll plays and try and get them to do that is like impossible.
It's hard, yeah.
So yeah, I like that you bring that up, because that is, and again, that was part of the reason I thought I was gonna like him more, is because he was kind of a high volume guy. It just was surprising how he was getting that volume, and Walter has some of that issue where he took some bad shots too, like not that volume wasn't always good. It was like bad decision making, bad shots, forcing the issue, and he's got to figure that out. Like he had a little bit of the J.R. Smith-itis, at times.
He's young. Yeah, I'm not that worried about it. The other thing that I'll say, because we've kind of beaten this horse dead, is his jumper looks good. Like he has a nice looking jumper, and so it's not like this volume on a broken jumper, on a crappy jumper, on things like that. So it's like my confidence of it coming along is probably higher than some of these other prospects that have to put in quite a bit more work there, like a Stephon Castle or a Maltas Buzelis, like guys that like they're not shooting the ball well right now. A top itch type of player. Like his jumper looks good. Like I think it'll start going in. And he's got the volume there.
Yeah. Cleveland Cavaliers. What are we doing?
Looks like they're going with Tyson.
Ooh.
From Cal.
Okay.
I was about to ask the group to predict the upcoming 3 picks, and that would not have been one of the 3 that I would have picked from. What's your initial reaction, Mark, to this one?
I like him. I had him a little bit lower, but he was one of those guys that I kept moving up and up and up, and then even by the end when I finalized my board, I was like, I don't know. I feel like I should maybe move him up even higher than where I have him. He has good size, like the highlight reel is showing here. Very versatile. He can do a little bit of everything. He's pretty good on defense. Has good feel for the game. Decent playmaker. He's a decent shot maker and shooter. Not like maybe elite, but. I don't know. He's got a lot of the right stuff, and had a great season last year. He's a little bit older, but not like super old. He's not like Knecht, who's 24 years old or whatever. But I don't know. Interesting player. Probably a little higher than I would have taken him. There's still guys on the board I for sure would have preferred who are younger, but not a bad pick for a win now team with the Cavaliers. Kind of almost has like a Caleb Martin type vibe to him. So yeah, anyway,
Sure.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know that there's a lot of like hardcore draft guys that have liked him for a long time. I never really have gotten excited. He's kind of a meh guy. I think that's a perfect example of like, because that's kind of he's kind of a meh NBA player. But I mean, he's stuck around in the league. Like, he's had a role. He's been in rotations. But what do you guys think? Sorry, we talked about Jacoby for too long. What do you guys think about the Messi pick in New Orleans? What do you like that?
Is that who they're going with?
That was 21. That was the pick before Tyson.
Well, I think Tyson went 20, didn't he? I thought maybe I'm confused.
Oh, or did they release that way far ahead?
I think they released it pretty far ahead.
Messi's super interesting. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts, because Messi's one of those guys, well, similar to Tyson.
I'm getting the order wrong.
Kind of like a draft Twitter like fan favorite. Like Messi especially has some like really big fans out there. So I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts on him.
Someone had mentioned Azubuike, and
Me.
yeah, and I just
Azubuike demon, the shadow that will never leave. Yeah.
Yeah, it just like it resonated on a new level because it's like he's coming from Baylor. Dennis Lindsey is a Baylor dude and stuff, and so I couldn't unsee it. You know, I think it's a better landing spot than Azubuike was coming to the Jazz at that point.
Yeah, I mean that fits a need for New Orleans, right? Like they need a center. I think
Zion Williamson's the center, isn't he?
I think Kel'el Ware would have been a better fit there because he can stretch the floor with Zion. And so I don't necessarily love the fit there for Misi, even though I think they do need like a backup type big, so he doesn't necessarily have to play with Zion. But yeah, the comp that I put in my big board is who Dennis Lindsey wished Azubuike would have turned into. Yeah. That was my comp for Misi. And so it's like, what did everybody like about Doak? Like he was just a freak athlete for his size, but it's like it obviously didn't translate into anything in the NBA. I think that Misi's build is maybe a little bit better. He's a little bit more maybe functionally athletic than Doak was. And so he maybe has a chance, but kind of a weird landing spot for him, I think.
Yeah. The thing I like about Misi versus like an Azubuike, and there's a couple things. One, I think Misi, like you're saying, is a much more functional athlete. He's much more quick twitch, and like can do some more things on the perimeter. And his like reaction speed is much higher, right? Like in terms of, like Udoka like had to like kind of foresee a shot coming in to get up and block it. Like he was just a little bit slow moving, which was always so bizarre to me because like I don't know how to level Udoka's film where he looks like a lumbering big guy with his like athletic testing where he's like a freak of nature athlete. Like he doesn't play like he tests, right? Whereas Misi's like the opposite. Like he looks twitchy, explosive, like he's really quick, like he's much different in that way. So more of a functional athlete. And then Misi has this like weird, almost like Giannis type like reckless abandon where he can put the ball on the floor. Like he's very, very raw. And I'm not trying to compare him to Giannis in this way in any sort of the way, but like Giannis early on, right, he just was that tall, lanky, super explosive athlete, and he would just kind of barrel into the lane and could handle the ball well enough to get to the lane or get to the rim and then finish with his athleticism. And Misi has a little bit of that. And Udoka never could have ever imagined doing anything with the ball on the floor and handling it, where Misi can do a little bit of ball handling. So agreed that the landing spot's a little bit weird just because, yeah, like it seems like you'd want a stretch five, and Misi is not that. Like he does not shoot at all. He's
like Deron Holmes probably would have fit better there, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. Like Misi has the higher upside and is way more interesting, but like Holmes functionally would have been a way better fit who could space the floor and still do some of the similar things that Misi can do, right? Yeah.
Agreed. So are the Jazz going to trade up? 22 is next. Is that going to happen, or is this just all been smoke? It ain't happening.
I don't know. Isaiah Collier, who's the best available player left on all of our boards, former number one pick for the draft. That's pretty
it looks like Phoenix is trading 22 to Denver, who's going to take Deron Holmes. So is Shams.
Okay. Well, that's okay. I was about to be very sad that Denver was about to get somebody better. I like Holmes, but
he's been projected there for like a month, it feels like, to Denver. Yeah. Wasn't it said that he had a promise there? And this is one that actually panned out. Yeah. Maybe he really did have a promise there. They moved up and took him.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, Denver. I mean, I like Holmes. I guess I like the fit on Denver. I don't know.
It feels like a pretty good swerve from you've got Jokic there. So whatever you do in this backup big spot, you can go a few different ways with it. They had originally a few years ago when they had signed DeAndre Jordan, kind of went with that classic drop big rim protecting guy. Here with Deron, you kind of get a little bit of both, right? He can be a lob threat, but his kind of instinct is to, get the ball, either take you off the dribble, back you down a little bit, or just take the three. So I think you got something that you can just kind of test and and it'd be experimental with. So it could be an interesting swerve on that backup center position.
Julian Strother was the guy that Denver took last year, right? And was like kind of surprisingly good to some people. But kind of another type of player like in this ilk, not different player in terms of like, position and all that and skill set, but older player, experienced, had some like pretty clear skill sets that seem to be able to fit into a team that's trying to win now. This feels kind of like the Julian Strother pick of this year, but at the power forward position. So, like, don't hate it for Denver at all, trying to win now. Not totally sure like where he fits into their rotation. Like, is he an Aaron Gordon backup? Is he like I don't know. It's a little unclear how he kind of fits in there, but the general thinking is, I don't hate it. It's a little bit weird for Denver because who are they about to lose? It's one of their guards or something, right? In free agency is going to be a question of whether or not they can retain him. Who is it? I'm spacing on the name right now.
It's not KCP, is it?
Oh yeah.
KCP.
It's KCP.
Oh, is it?
So I would have thought that maybe they would have looked at a KCP, redundancy plan here instead of a Holmes, but I don't know. But kind of interesting.
Looking ahead, I kind of think Furphy might be on the docket for Milwaukee here, and I don't really see Collier as a Knicks guy. We could be at 26, and Collier's still on the board.
Clark's into the Knicks, right? They're in win now mode.
I mean, they've been rumored about him for a good while now.
I don't know if they can actually do that financially anymore, but
I don't think they can, right? They would have to trade back some sort of salary to make that work. I don't know if they could, but I'm totally down for it. Yeah, like you were the one that threw that out earlier, right? A Collier for Clarkson swap, and they're making two picks right there. But I mean, logically, with the cap space hell that they're in right now, it would make a lot of sense for them to take 24 and 25, right? Take two rookies that are on like bargain contracts to fill out your roster with. So I'd be surprised if they trade those picks.
The only thing on that is it would actually make more sense for them to trade back and get second rounders, because then they would have like the non-guaranteed contract. So yeah,
right? We'd trade 32.
Yeah, well that's what I'm wondering, because I mean, it's a pretty open secret, so it's not a secret anymore. The Jazz really like Tyler Kolek. Who else has been rumored to Kolek is Phoenix, who just traded back but is still ahead of the Jazz at 28. So maybe the Jazz are looking at, hey, we still want to get Kolek, and then maybe you can keep, I don't know, maybe you keep 29 to do 32 plus something to jump to 24 or 25, get Kolek, and then see who falls to 29. I don't know. Maybe that's something you do. I would still really love to move Clarkson, because I'm a very well-known Clarkson hater, and I'm just sick of that. I'm sick of him on the team.
They're going to move him, yeah.
Yeah, and this seems just like a good range. Like, I would love to get a Collier, a Furphy, a Tyler Smith, a Cam Christie, a Ryan Dunn. Like, I would love even just a one-for-one. Like, just Clarkson for one pick, get one of those guys, be done with it. I'm super game for that.
If the Jazz can get Isaiah Collier, this is an A-plus draft for me. I mean... Yeah. You fill essentially a huge roster need with Cody Williams, and then I think you get star potential with Collier. Again, you can argue whether or not he even gets close to what his ceiling is, but that's definitely a swing that I would love the Jazz to take, especially if they're going to tank the next 2 years. Like, that's the type of player that you want on your roster.
Yeah. By the way, just throwing this out here. One of my sources, who I would say is probably like 50-50 on things, but still has given me some stuff, is saying that Brandon Ingram to the Cavaliers is in the works as we speak.
That's a swap for what's his name, the little guard there, Garland. You think that's what that is?
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see if that happens, but that's an interesting thing that somebody is telling me. So.
That has been rumored. I know I've seen reports of that thrown out there. Like, people have not necessarily reported that it's been in the works, but as a potential trade that would make sense for both teams, because I think it would.
That's a weirdly I like it for both teams kind of one. So
Yeah, the CJ McCollum experiment outside of the latter half of that first year when they traded for him at the deadline, outside of that, it really hasn't panned out to the tune that they had hoped, especially given that they gave him the 3-year extension. It really just hasn't been what they had envisioned. And
Yeah.
I know they've had some other injuries and stuff that have kind of kept them from the team that they thought they'd have, but still, I think Darius Garland sets you up far better.
Yeah, they've been just hammered with injuries. Like Zion's been hurt, Brandon Ingram's been hurt, Jose Alvarado's been hurt. Like I want to say Trey Murphy's probably even missed a little bit of time there, but I love that roster. Like, but they just haven't been able to put it together.
They're one of those teams that every year I'm like, how are they not better? Like record wise, like their talent seems out of alignment. Like they should be a better team, and then every year they're like a play-in team. I'm like, what is going on here? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
The only thing related to Knicks and getting Clarkson that I can really see having any traction or any possibility with the salary stuff is if you build something around us absorbing Julius Randle's contract.
Done. I don't even care.
If we get Collier out of it, sign me up.
Yeah, that's like me. I'm like, whatever. I don't care. Like John Collins, Julius Randle, sure, we'll figure that out.
Yeah. So that's like 56 million, this year, and then around 60 the following year. Then it's done.
Yeah, I mean
Right.
that money's gonna go to Miles Bridges anyways. So it's either
No.
Jeez, the optics.
just
would
be ready.
next
Just be
level.
ready for that. Just saying.
The Jazz would lose half of their fan base if that happened.
Hey, not
And the
not
other
the worst thing.
and
Not
the
the worst
other
thing.
half would be like, wait, why don't people like Bridges?
Yeah. He's not a big enough needle mover for me to even dabble in that at all. Like maybe if we did like some superstar trade like for Joel Embiid or like I don't know Giannis or something, and then he's another piece. Maybe you can justify it at that point, but at this point where the Jazz are at, like that just makes no sense in my opinion.
By the way, just looking to the next pick for the Jazz, I hate that the Timberwolves and no longer the Nuggets, but now the Suns. I hate that they are right before the Jazz. I hate it. I hate it when like the rivals pick
Yeah.
before you. It's just the worst.
Yeah. And they're gonna still Collier, and so I'm gonna hate it even more.
I know
probably.
and that's the thing. It's just like or even like back in the Tyrese Maxey draft. Like I was so desperately wanting us to trade up for Maxey, and then freaking Philly, who I hate, I cannot stand Philly, freaking got Maxey, and I was just ticked. And part of that was because we had that coin flip. If you remember that year, it was like a 3-way tie or something, and Philly won the coin flip. And as we always do as the Jazz, we lost it, and then they got Maxey. I was ticked. I hate it when that happens. That's the
Brutal.
worst. That's the worst feeling ever.
I was thinking we could just send those prayer circle tweets for Kyle Filipowski to Minnesota or something.
Yo, I am worried.
yes.
I'm worried about Filipowski for us because he.
Well, no, that's what I'm
I
saying
know.
to Minnesota.
Yeah, that is what we need because or to the Knicks, like if they keep these picks. I've had a weird thing with Filipowski. Like sometimes I look at him and I'm like, okay, he's Larry Markkinen light, and then other times I watch him, I'm like, dude, I hate this guy. Like
That's Frank Kaminsky.
Yeah.
So right now I think the Jazz are at like a solid B draft for me. If they draft Collier, it goes to an A. If they draft Filipowski, that goes to a D.
It's the swing pick that's coming up.
Yep.
Honestly,
I
though,
like the board for the
Filipowski,
Jazz.
I could totally see it to the Knicks.
It does
yeah.
kind of make some sense, right? Like, because they actually probably have to move off of Julius Randle, and not that Filipowski is like Julius Randle, but you could fit him into that spot, right? Like the power forward, small ball 5, can space the floor a little bit, do some things off the dribble. Like again, I'm not saying he's Julius Randle, but functionally, you could talk yourself into that as a backup plan and just some depth there of like, okay, whatever we do there with Randle, we wouldn't hate having a guy like that.
Yeah.
And again, a guy a little bit older of a guy, more experienced, comes from a allotted program. You could talk yourself into this guy can help us win right now, and they're clearly in win now mode. So yeah, I wouldn't hate that.
Maybe Leon Rose is like Tibbs, I've given you every single guy you would ever want. I've given you your prototypical guy at every juncture. Allow me this.
Yeah, I am. Oh, but dude, are they gonna take Ryan Dunn? That's like such a.
So,
That's
oh
a
yeah,
big
that's a
Tibbs
Tibbs pick right there,
That is
right?
a
That would
Tibbs
make
pick.
a ton of sense.
Oh,
But this
no.
this pick from Milwaukee is so weird for me, and I know we're probably kind of delayed here, but in my opinion, like the Tyler Kolek is like makes so much sense going to Milwaukee, like situationally where they're at, kind of the type of player they need. I have no idea why they took the player that they took here, unless they are planning on taking a Godfather offer from the Jazz and trading Giannis to the Jazz for all of our picks. This pick makes sense, but if not, I don't understand why they took this kid.
Well,
I just
kinda
saw.
thought
I just
that
saw the
the-
pick. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
same. Oh, I was kind of thinking that Furphy made some sense here as kind of
And
heir
Furphy, yeah.
apparent to
Dude.
Pat Connaughton.
Furphy's sick.
They had at one point, brought in Dante DiVincenzo, and he was pretty good. Then got injured, and they just gave up on the project.
Yeah, I like AJ Johnson, but I'm with you. This is surprising.
That's a project. I mean, maybe it's a Giannis pick, right? Like in 3, 4, 5 years, he's like, dude, AJ Johnson should have went top 5, but it's like they're contending right now.
I mean, high upside project. I think he can impact the game right now, but he's got to work on his body. He's a little bit one of those, again, undersized guys, but super athlete. Can do some things off the dribble, can shoot. But again, like you're saying, Josh, like not a guy that I can imagine.
He's not going to be in the
playoffs.
rotation.
Yeah, like I just don't. Maybe in the regular season, but certainly not in the playoffs. Like that would be shocking if he was a playoff rotation guy, right?
But I'm with you. I love AJ Johnson. Like, I think that, like I said before, I think we could look back and it's like that was top 10 level talent in this draft, and he went at 23. But
Yeah.
it's such a strange fit.
Yeah, especially there's just so many like impact players still on the board that could help
Yeah.
you right now. Man, I'm getting this is part of the reason I was more excited for these late picks for the Jazz
Yeah.
because the way this board is falling, I mean the value.
It looks
Collier,
good.
Yeah, Collier,
It looks really good,
Murphy,
yeah.
Tyler Smith. Like there's a lot of guys that are still. And I would love for some of these older guys that I really don't like. Like I'm not a big Shireman guy. I think he's a great college player, but don't know about the NBA. I'd love for him to go to like the Knicks, like some of these win now teams. Take some of these old guys up, and then we can scoop up some of these more interesting young players that are more toolsy and have the higher upside, right?
And I think Shireman was actually projected by a lot of people to go to Milwaukee as well. Like, he made a lot of sense there. And so,
Yeah.
to your point with the Knicks as well, like that's kind of just a weird pick with AJ Johnson. But there's a ton of guys that are still here for the Jazz, and the next pick is playing in their favor as well. Like, if they don't take Collier at this point, I'm going to be really angry.
Yeah. Collier and Furphy are like clear, like red flashing lights to me. Furphy's one of those guys that when he was another one of those guys I watched him, and he was like 12th or 13th on my board after first watch. He's got a little ways to go. Like he he's not like a high volume guy, whatever. But as a two-way wing who can do a lot of things, shoot, dribble a little bit, pass a little bit, defend. He hustles. He's athletic. He's got the size and length. Like, and he's young. Like he's not like some old guy.
Yeah.
And if you actually go watch the tape of him when he was playing like in Australia, his ball handling and playmaking for others is something that I don't think was totally shown in its full at Kansas. And I actually think there's some untapped upside there. So to have a guy like that potentially within reach as well is pretty sick. Cam Christie's another guy I'm like way higher on than consensus. Like he would be a super sick pickup. I'm pretty pleased with the options. I mean, we got a ways to go, but there's just so many guys left. Like, somebody's going to be available at 29, and we're going to be happy with, I think.
I can't believe Tyler Smith is still on the board. Like,
Yeah.
I love Bobby Clintman a ton. Like, I've talked about Daddier. I think like he's 18 years old. Like, there's another wing right there that like has like a ton of potential. Like, there are so many guys here right now.
And then we'll have 32, which, by the way, just quick side note, I hate that they did this stupid 2-day thing. I really wish they just did it one night.
I know that sucks for especially teams like us that are like right there, and it's like
Yeah.
we've got to wait a whole other day for this dumb pick.
Well, especially because it's like we're gonna have 29, we're gonna be hyped, and then it's like 30, and then it's like
It's over.
okay, not like all the momentum. It's just like what are we doing? Like, can we just like get to the next pick? It's almost like in a fantasy football draft, like you do a long draft, you have like the turn, and like you pick, the turn happens, and you're on the backside of the turn, and then it gets stuck, and you have to like wait till the person wakes up the next day or whatever. It's like, I had my pick ready, like I had both of these ready, and I gotta wait a whole 24 hours to make the next one. That's like the worst feeling ever. So.
Well, and to add insult to injury, it's literally at 2 p.m. Mountain tomorrow.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so we're like gonna be sitting there,
Gross.
passively kind of consuming the draft basically.
Why would they
So,
do that? I hate that.
I
I
don't know,
think
all these
that-
East Coast people are just like so stoked, and I'm like, you guys.
Oh, the
It's kind of
worst.
on brand with Adam Silver, though. It's like he's made all these like completely stupid, like meaningless changes, like with all of these like that was the thing that I laughed about, like people showing LeBron holding up the in-season tournament trophy the other day. And like how meaningless that ended up being. And it's like, and I mean, you can debate whether you like the in-season tournament or not, but that's kind of what this feels like. It's just like a change for change's sake. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like, why would we do this on another day? I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, especially like, so if you're going to do a 2-day thing and then start the second round in the middle of the afternoon, do it on a weekend. So like people can actually watch it. Like that's the sense I got, was the whole point was more media coverage, more like more revenue, whatever. But it's like, dude, it's not.
Nobody's going to be watching.
No one's watching this. Yeah, like no one's going to be watching. So why not just do it on one night? Like you'd get more coverage and more eyeballs on it in one night than doing this weird funky thing. I don't know. Yeah. Down with Adam Silver. We need to vote him out. Get him out. Get him out.
Yeah, with Nikola Jokic, getting his third MVP and winning a title and stuff, and he's famously drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. Part of me had thought, oh hey, there's more variability now with second rounders, kind of bursting onto the scene. Maybe they're trying to, not rush it, give these their due, really kind of evaluate them as potential contributors, and then they just go and put it at 2 p.m. Mountain. It's just like, okay.
Yeah. By the way, trade. I don't know if you see this. I'm guessing this is what Woj just talking about here.
Let's hear it.
The Wizards are trading into the 24th pick.
Oh wow.
Interesting.
And I'm gonna have some things to say about this pick when it gets announced.
So they're just flipping from 24 down to 26 essentially.
That's what it's looking like. I didn't quite see the full details, but
They'll probably get like a second round pick or something with that, I would guess.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, I'm glad this guy's coming off the board.
yeah, talk about a guy I'm thrilled is off the board and pushing other people down. Guess we might as well just talk about it at this stage of the draft.
Is that okay, Adam?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. No, we're at the stage, and we touched on him a little bit. We can, let Mark burn off some residual rage from getting his account suspended, and he can just go off on Kaishan George.
So I have him 50th on my big board. I just do not get it with him. I watched him the first time and hated him. I came back and watched him again multiple times, especially kind of here recently where it was being talked about like he's going to go in the first round. And every time I watched him, I just hated him more. Like, in fact, every time I went back, I pushed him lower and lower on my board. The weird thing for me is, so people keep talking about him like he's like some young high upside guy. He's like almost like 21, right? Like he's not actually like really young.
Yep.
He's got the size, like he's 6'7", 6'10" wingspan, and he's like 200 plus pounds or 210-ish. But like every time I watch him, like not a good athlete, plays super soft, doesn't have a good feel for the game, not a playmaker for his teammates or himself. He can shoot it, but not like he shoots okay. And even then, it's like just okay. And it's like he can't really shoot it off the dribble. He's like pretty much a spot up only guy. Somebody, I think it was The Ringer, compared him to Joe Ingles, which was an atrocious comp because Joe Ingles could pass play.
Just a fantastic playmaker. Yeah.
Like elite level pick and roll player. George is like complete opposite. Like makes no sense to me. I really, this is like one of the more baffling ones. Like maybe I'm just way wrong. Out of like the last several draft classes, I do not understand this pick. And a first round guy over like Tyler Smith, Isaiah Collier. They picked him before Isaiah Collier. Like, what are we doing? That makes zero sense.
Even
to me.
if you wanted
I
just
don't get
like a 3-point specialist, why not go for the dude like 2 years younger out of Minnesota, Cam Christie?
Or Furphy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Like, I just don't like Furphy is a better shooter, better playmaker, better athlete, younger. This one is weird. Like, poor Washington. Man, poor Washington. I'll stop it there. But this one is bizarro world to me. I do not get this at all.
They had a chance to just go away with a pretty A+ draft. You know, Sarr, Carrington, and then they trade away stuff to go up 2 spots to get George.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Oh, that's true. They traded up for him. Oh
Yep.
man. After trading Denny, like, This is. Oh, go ahead. I'll pause. Go ahead.
I wondered this last year too, like playing really close attention to Georgia's like to the draft. I wonder if sometimes like these GMs just fall asleep and like whoever is supposed to keep track of who's off the board, like they're like, oh, we thought Isaiah Collier got picked like 10 picks ago. We didn't even know he was still on the board, or like Tyler Kolek, or like these guys. I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Like, and it's just like all at this point, it's like it almost feels like these 10 organizations are trying to make a statement. Like we're gonna like pick a guy that everybody thought sucked, and we're gonna like shock everybody. He's gonna turn into Giannis. He's gonna turn into this, and it's just like you shouldn't be trying to do that at this point. Like it's not gonna happen with Kaishan George. It's not gonna happen with these guys.
Like, well, and even if you want to do that, like pick the guy that can actually do that. Don't pick the 21-year-old who just like sucks. Like go like AJ Johnson makes more sense to me.
Sure, yeah, that does make sense.
George.
AJ with his ceiling and his upside.
Exactly. Like at least I can like get it. But like with George, I'm like, what? Like what are you even hoping he turns into? Like all of his comps are bad. They're all like players who don't play or are out of the league, in my opinion. So I'm like, I don't see. Like he can't help now, and he has no ceiling to like look forward to. So
right,
I don't know. That one is. I mean, just look who's on the board. It just makes no sense to me. Yeah, and your argument there that they forgot would make sense, but the problem is they would have had to forgot there's like 30 other guys.
I know, right?
It's like they got sucked into a black hole, and like they're in a different reality where 30 other players just don't exist. You know? I don't know. Bizarre. Sorry, this one's maybe I'm way wrong, but this one.
I agree with you.
This one's bad.
Like Daddy has higher upside. Klintman has higher upside. Tyler Smith has higher upside. Like Isaiah Collier has higher upside. Duricic has higher upside, and he's probably the same age. Like, I don't understand what you're doing. I mean, the best case scenario, he turns into Cam Johnson, right? Like, because that was the Cam Johnson pick for Phoenix. Everyone's like, okay, yeah, he's a good shooter, but why are you taking him at 10 or 11 in the draft? It's like, this is a terrible pick. But that pick ended up looking really good for Phoenix 2-3 years down the road because he did turn into that, right? But that's going to be best case scenario for Kaishan George and Washington.
Even like a Justin Edwards who is not good, but like at least I get it, right? Like at least there's upside hope. George, there's just like I don't know what the hope is there. Yeah. But hey, great for the Jazz. I love it for the Jazz. That's like we need more guys in my 50 range to go right here. I'd love that to happen.
Yeah.
Like thrilled about that. But good question though. Like who's the Collier team? Because we got the Knicks. I don't think they're the Collier team.
It's going to be whoever picks right before the Jazz. I know that's who picks at 28.
It's going to be Denver.
The Suns now, right? Because they made the trade.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
How frustrating. They trade back and get him, and the Jazz could have traded up with the Suns and got him, and they didn't.
Are the Suns going to take him? Like with Durant and Beal and Booker? Like,
I mean, Kolek makes that he's a perfect fit right there. Like that's exactly what I made that prediction like back in like April or May. Like They have no assets. They have no money. They can't do anything. They need a win now player. They don't need a rookie that's like has potential. Like Tyler Kolek is a home run for Phoenix.
And they need somebody who can actually pass the ball because none of those guys pass to each other, right?
Best pick and roll player in the draft. Like he would fit like a glove in my opinion there.
Yeah. This. I'm getting excited. I'm really. This probably means that the Jazz are going to now disappoint me. They made me really happy at 10, and now they're going to just do something dumb and like take
just like the Wizards just did.
Yeah. And like the Jazz kind of have a history of like taking funky later round picks that are just a little bit odd, right? So I don't know. We'll find out. This is gonna make Josh mad, but this is gonna be the Bryce Sensabaugh pick for me. And they're gonna do some Bryce Sensabaugh pick, and I'll be like, what are we doing? You know?
Yeah, that's probably which I loved. That was the opposite for me last year. Like I loved the Jazz's Sensabaugh pick, like fantastic value. Like I had a lottery grade on Bryce. I love this pick for the Knicks right here. I love this kid. I think this is a fantastic pick for them.
I haven't seen this. I'm interested.
Yeah, Adam Silver's announcing it right now. Dadier.
Yeah.
A little bit, just a touch earlier than where he had been generally mocked, but
he would have been fun on the Jazz, and I know the Jazz were in on him. They liked him, so that's tough to have him go there when he's so close.
I think he's going to be fantastic value.
Yeah.
Like I don't even really think it mattered which team picked him like this late in the first. Like I think he's going to be a good player.
Yeah.
Like he's got great size. I feel like he could do a little bit more than like a guy like Salaün, like with the ball in his hands. I think that he has some potential to be able to shoot the ball and score a little bit.
Who's like a comp for him? Like, cause I kind of struggled to find a comp for him, which is not like neither here nor there. I don't know. He's just kind of an interesting combination of talent and skill, and I don't know.
I mean, it's funny that I just said Salaün because I tried for like months to figure out a comp with him and I couldn't. Like I was thinking of like some weird hybrid of like Dante Exum with like Jackson Hayes or something, or like just really weird crap. Like I couldn't come up with anything for him. It's been the same thing with Dadier too. Like I haven't been able to either.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say with Dadier, like in fact, let me get his Twitter account right so I can give him a proper shout out. Ball is Life. I don't know if you guys know CY Ball is Life _CY.
Oh yeah.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
So I actually think he's one of the best draft like analysts and scouts on Twitter, who's like part of the draft Twitter space. I really love talking with him. Him and I often disagree, but he usually ends up being right. And part of the reason I really like engaging with him, he had Dadier above Salaün, and so and I
could totally see that.
Yeah, and there is I can see the argument, right? Like he's a better ball handler, he's more dynamic as a playmaker. Like he actually kind of has, maybe this is like a comp, like a Jaime Jaquez type of a vibe to him, right? Like kind of similar build, similar skill set, but he's younger. Like
of like an underrated athlete, like a sneaky athlete. Like people don't look at Jaime, but like his measurables were good, his vertical and stuff.
Yeah, and just like a good feel for the game, like he has, right? Like just a gamer, just a baller who's gonna play and like he's not gonna make a lot, So he's one of those guys like at this range of the draft could be incredible value and could really end up being again like what we expected with this draft, where the top of the draft is weird, but there's gonna be some guys that hit and probably some guys later that hit. Easily could see him being one of those guys that we all look back and we're like, what the heck? What were we doing here?
I mean, Tibbs is never going to play him. He'll play in the G League all year long.
Hey, but Jordan Clarkson.
But once Tibbs, runs all of his players into the ground again this year, and they underperform in the playoffs, they'll fire Tibbs. They'll hire a new coach, and then Daddy will be in a good spot there in New York.
We just need him to get dumped to the Jazz for something. I would have loved him on the Jazz. He would have been a lot of fun. So
I just finished a little bit of research. I went through all of ESPN's high school recruitment back to 2007, looking at the top-ranked, high school recruit from each class and seeing where they went in the draft. The lowest I found someone falling was Avery Bradley in 2010. was ranked number 1 in his high school class, and was drafted 19th.
So this is Collier
This
setting
is-
a record here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're only going back to 2007, but this is like seriously pretty unprecedented stuff for this kind of modern era to see someone,
crazy.
Ranked that highly. Yeah, Gavoni dropped this dude off a cliff.
He screwed this kid. Similar to like a lot of the stuff that came out the night before and the day of with Cam Whitmore.
Yeah.
Like, I keep drawing those parallels with those two because I've seen so many from the beginning, but it feels very similar. This is another reason.
It feels way similar, but like even worse, right? Again, Collier was the number 1 guy on Gavoni's board for a while. Like,
yeah.
And now
and like very beginning of the year.
Yeah, and like was for a while. It wasn't like a 1 week thing. It was like multiple weeks, like I think a couple months worth. Like he was up there. Like I remember all the hype videos and like all that stuff. And
Gavoni tried to have a conversation or get some intel on him or something. He blew him off, and Gavoni like took it personally and like has just like been out to like smear him for the last couple of months.
Yeah, well I'm gonna hit up some people because I'm curious. I'm curious to hear more because I hadn't really heard anything about Collier, other than like what's publicly, out there. So I'm gonna see if I can't find out what's going on, because this is crazy to me. If he gets to 29, again, I actually agree with the people who think he's not like a great fit for us, but the talent is just,
I don't care.
know.
Yeah. Like, I personally think he has a higher ceiling than Keontae George. Like I already said, he had a higher ceiling than Scoot Henderson, who I had a higher grade on Keontae last year. I am lower on Keontae than a lot of Jazz fans are. That's not to say that I don't like Keontae and I'm not rooting for him, and I hope he proves me wrong for the sake of the team that I love. Like, I want him to be good. But just as prospects, I think that Collier is more talented.
If you could smash Collier and Keontae together, that'd be ideal.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
His proficiency at the rim is just fantastic. And to date, that's really limited Keontae. And Keontae has, tried to develop this floater. And unless you're really special with the floater, it's really hard to live by it.
Yeah, it's a bad shot.
I'm not saying this player I'm about to bring up is Collier, but so just I'm putting that out there. But Collier has a little bit of that Darren Williams to him, where he's a big body guard and really can like bully people on his way to the rim, and that's part of why I'm just like, I think I would be really interested in that skill. It's just unique and rare to get a guy like that, especially, and he's more explosive than Darren was in many ways, right?
Yeah.
But hey, Weber State legend, Dylan
This is
Jones,
awesome. Yeah.
This is good for him. I personally not a huge fan. He was my Bryce Sensabaugh. Well, he's a guard who really should be like a power forward, and that's a weird thing. But really talented, really good ball player. I like him a lot. I had heard the Jazz were kind of sniffing around and were considering him at various points, but good for him going in the first round, and good for Weber State.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Dylan. I really hope he pans out. I went and watched him live where I live in Ogden. Watched a couple Weber State games, and I kind of wanted to not like him because it's just like, the only good player to come out of Weber has been Dame, obviously, who was amazing. Ballin' Boy and a lot of these other guys that have come out of Weber State, they're just like, man. And that's kind of the feeling that I had with Dylan Jones. But when I watched him, he was just solid in all aspects, defending, like getting to the rim. Even he doesn't shoot the ball like fantastic, but it's just like he doesn't have like a ton of flaws in his game other than like he's not a great athlete, and he's kind of a tweener with his size. So that's why I was like, I don't know if he's going to be an NBA player, but I really hope that he does. I hope that this is a good fit for him and that he can have success in the league. But I think it's 100% dependent on his fit, which he's going to Oklahoma City, right?
Oh, is that what happened? Did they trade
him? Yeah. This 5 second rounders to the Knicks for Jones.
Whew. That's actually great for the Knicks. That's similar to what we talked about, right? Like they actually need second rounders, not first rounders.
Yep.
Getting They sent
5.
5?
Yep.
That's crazy. I mean, Oklahoma City has like 20, so like it's probably whatever to them. But
Yeah, they're like, we got to get rid of some of this crap. Like, we're never going to be able to use it. But what do you guys think off the top of your head of that fit there?
I mean, I kind of like it. I mean, again, older player. I think he can probably try and contribute. Now, I kind of saw Dylan Jones as almost like a Grant Williams, like
Yeah,
kind of an
body type wise.
Yeah, kind of same body type, kind of undersized, but still a little bit burly, kind of power forward, but almost kind of like a guard skill set in some ways. So like if you think like, okay, would I take him and put him on? Would I take a Grant Williams and put him on Oklahoma City? Yeah, I actually think I kind of like that. So. And I would hope that Dylan Jones is actually a little bit more dynamic with his ball handling and playmaking.
He is.
Creation. Yeah. So yeah, I don't hate that for OKC at all. I'm pretty interested by that one. By the way, just real quick, so I'm just hitting up some of my people to see what's going on with Collier. The first message I got back, this is all it says: can't shoot, 2 ball in hand, hasn't defended, didn't work out well. Not overly athletic.
Oh, geez.
So,
I don't buy half that. Like, the can't defend, like, that's true. Like, or I shouldn't say can't defend, didn't defend. Like, I mean, he has nothing to hang his hat on there. I think he can defend, but yeah, he's shown nothing that he can do there. The can't shoot, I think you would agree with that, Mark, but I don't agree with that. Like, I buy his shot and his shot creation. Quite a bit. Like, it needs to go in the hoop more, like we kind of talked about with Jacoby Walter, but he can cross over, he can create separation, step back, he can get looks off. But he's got to work, I think, on his mechanics a little bit. He's not super consistent, like with his upward to his release point. Like, there's some stuff that needs to be worked on there, but I'm not worried about it. I mean, I'm worried about it way less than Stephon Castle, and everybody seems to think that they can teach him to shoot and he'll be just fine. I'm way less worried about Collier's shot.
So here's the thing. Here's why I ultimately dropped him down my board quite a bit. Because when I did first watch, I had him as a top 10 pick, and then I bumped him down to 16. And I was tempted to even move him lower, to be honest. But the reason why is because of the shooting specifically. And the thing that I worry about is he's not even a good free throw shooter, right? And
that's a good point. That's valid.
Like with Topic, who we talked about earlier, who went higher, obviously, he struggled with his shooting, but actually was a really good free throw shooter. He was like an 87% free throw shooter or something like that. So it's like, okay, I can actually buy into him potentially having the mechanics in place and the foundation in place to be a shooter down the road. Whereas with Collier, he can't even shoot free throws. So like, I actually think he's got to rework his mechanics and like redo everything, and that is a scary proposition because that normally doesn't pan out. Like, it's pretty rare for a guard who just can't shoot and is that bad of a shooter, even on free throws, to ever really become average or better. And if you can't become an average or better point guard or shooting point guard in the NBA, it's just really, really tough to make that work, right? So
I mean, I see where you're coming from. I'm just not that worried about it because, I mean, to start the first 10, 20 games of the season, he was shooting like 40% from 3. And then that dropped. He finished the season at like 34%. But the other, I guess the counter argument that I'll make to that, like they're showing Devin Carter, who is what I was going to bring up right now. Like, Devin Carter's jumper is garbage. And like his freshman and sophomore years, he shot like 29% from 3. And then he has one good shooting season as a junior. Like, oh, we're not worried about the shot. Like, it's fine. And I was like, I still have quite a bit. I've got quite a bit of concern with Carter's jumper. And so, but that's the thing. It's just like, that's all that the Collier needs to do, right? It's just like, but he's not starting from a 25, 28% year like Ryan Dunn, like Topic, like Carter, like some of these guys. And I mean, to your point, Mark, you could probably make the argument. It's like, well, his free throw shooting's not translate, so I wouldn't be surprised if it goes worse. Like in the first season of the NBA, he's not shooting 34% from 3. He's shooting 30% or 29% for 3 or worse, something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not that concerned about it, honestly. More kind of the Jacoby Walter argument where it's like he can get it off and the volume's there. He does need to work on some stuff mechanically, which Jacoby doesn't. But it's like guys improve their shooting all the time in the NBA.
Yeah, that's fair. I think here's one way to look at it. Like, if you're trying to sell your front office on that pick, with Collier coming up here. What I would say is, just forget that he played a season of college. Like where would you take him coming out of high school? Because he still wasn't a great shooter in high school, but the talent,
he was number one. Yeah, he was the number one guy coming out of high school.
Like the raw talent is still there. I mean, again, like struggles on defense, but everybody his age doesn't play defense nowadays. Like, it's pretty rare to have anybody that young be good on defense. So like whatever on that. He can't shoot. Okay, great. Like a lot of young players can't shoot. But he's still like talented. So like, where are you going to take him? Like if he had come out straight from high school, where does he go in this draft? Like he probably goes much higher. But because you had a year of college and he showed these warts and kind of validated those concerns.
In Bronny James, his media shadow, and that team was a complete mess. Like the construct and the coaching there was garbage. Like it wasn't a good fit for him. But the Jazz are on the board, and he is there. So now's the chance.
Crazy.
I'm spoiling this a little bit, but they took Ryan Dunn was the pick to Phoenix.
Oh no!
Oh wow!
I knew it was gonna happen. Phoenix, you're killing me. Oh no! Oh man,
what's gonna happen is the Jazz are gonna take Collier at 29, and then they're gonna trade him. That was my like worst fear with Bryce last year. I was like, yeah, I can't get my hopes up. They took Bryce, but I was like, there's no way they're gonna keep him. They're gonna trade him. That's exactly what's gonna happen. They're gonna get my hopes up, then they're gonna crush him.
I'm just crushed by Ryan Dunn going ahead of us. Freaking Phoenix, gosh, that's
actually a pretty good landing spot for him.
Oh, it's great.
So Tony is taking a guess and saying that the Jazz are going to take Kolek, and I'm going to be pretty upset if they take Kolek over Collier.
They have been very in love with Kolek for a long time. So I'm
fine if they take him at 32. Could Collier fall all the way to 32?
Yeah, that may happen because the Celtics aren't going to take him. I mean, but like Furphy, Christie, Smith. I mean, there's a bunch of guys still.
There's a ton, yeah.
But just real quick, so we didn't talk about him, but I'm not a Shannon guy. So
I am
not a fan. So I'm glad he went ahead of us.
Shannon's really interesting because he's been on every draft board since he was a freshman. And he's fallen kind of every year. He did it as a freshman, a sophomore, and a junior, and he never really declared. But he definitely came in. I think he's like a very quick, like baseline to baseline athlete. Like he was fantastic in Illinois this year. In the tournament as well, I thought he was awesome. He was scoring the ball. I mean, his jumper has come a long way since his freshman year. It's still not great, but I think that that's actually a pretty good fit for Minnesota because that's a guy that can contribute. He's athletic. I think he can defend a little bit, so that might work out for them.
Yeah, I think maybe like his upside is like a Lance Stevenson type, like kind of just like a crazy, out of control bowling ball, like just gonna go break stuff. That's kind of how he plays. He's not that big, but yeah, he's interesting. He's another.
My comp for him was like a Derek Jones Jr. I think he could maybe be a role player to that extent. Similar, maybe not as good as Lance Stevenson, but
yeah, man, I'm like legitimately super sad about Dunn going ahead. That's one pick ahead. Freaking Denver, stupid Denver losing that game and getting us bumped to 29. Oh my gosh, that is very sad.
They took him.
Boy.
Did they really?
Wow, good grief. We can't have nice things.
This is an A+ draft. The Jazz just took Isaiah Collier. They have got to keep him.
Let's go.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
seriously, we can have nice things apparently.
What is going on?
Holy mackerel.
Danny Ainge with the cojones.
Crushing it. Those 20s pick Bryce Sensabaugh, Isaiah Collier in back-to-back drafts. Thank you so much.
That is interesting.
Yeah, and sets what is, at least in recent drafts record of the number one prospect in your high school class being drafted 29. The previous low was Avery Bradley in 2010, drafted at 19. Holy cow! I can't believe. I mean, when we talked kind of around where Milwaukee was going to be picking, we kind of thought, hey, he could keep sliding, but it's just wild to think that it lasted this long.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I mean, again, for a long while there was somebody that was being mocked ahead of the Jazz when they were at 8, and then was thought to be still, somebody in that 10 range even, and then all of a sudden had this huge slide.
Now just give me Johnny Furphy at 32.
Holy crap! That would be like generational draft for the Jazz. Like in arguably like the worst draft in 10 years, and the Jazz just freaking crush it.
Yeah.
For any of Furphy, Tyler Smith, or Cam Christie, sign me up. Like those would all be great picks at 32. Dang, Collier, I'm trying to wrap my head around. I don't know. I don't know how he fell this far.
I'm sure they're gonna report on it and everything, but I'm sure the Jazz are gonna be like, oh, we feel like we stole the draft.
Yeah,
they're gonna market the heck out of that one.
As they should. I mean, yeah. Talented guy. Thinking about the fit with the Jazz is a little weird. Not a good fit next to Keontae and Sexton. Weirdly, like he's kind of a Colin Sexton replacement. I think a good version of Collier looks actually a lot like Sexton in some weird ways. Which I don't hate.
More talented at the rim.
I think one of the most underrated parts of Isaiah's game, and I just couldn't believe why he wouldn't get credit for this. He is like miles better as a playmaker than Colin Sexton. Like he is an underratedly excellent passer. I mean, he averaged 4.3 assists per game, and his bigs were literally dropping balls off their feet, off their head, like they couldn't catch it at USC this year. He easily could have averaged 6 assists a game. Like I think he's a fantastic playmaker. And so I think you're right with kind of the size, the energy, the athleticism of Colin, but just a significantly better playmaker.
Yeah. Man, I'm like kind of stunned we took him. I'm just so used to the Jazz not doing this kind of a pick.
I know. What the heck?
This is I'm Danny Ainge, the Danny Ainge special. Yeah, that's interesting. I think you for sure got to trade Clarkson though. Like you got too many guards, and you want to play Collier. Like I think
many guards.
You want to play this guy. I don't think you want to draft him and just like redshirt him. I could see a reality where that happens, and maybe you're like, yo, you got to mature up a little bit or whatever. But like, I think at some point you're gonna want to play him. I mean, he's a talented guy, and I just don't think you can just keep him off the floor. I think you got to find a way to, like, do you send Collier to the G League? I mean, I guess you could. Maybe that's a good test for him, but
it depends on what direction the Jazz take. Are they going to tank? Like, are they going to move John Collins? Are they going to move Jordan Clarkson? Like, are they going to just surround the young guys around Larry Markkinen and get high-level talent in the 25 and 26 draft? If they are, then I think he's going to play, right? You play him. If not, if they're going to try and make these moves to, like, get better, like they keep saying, or go big game hunting, then, yeah, he's going to go to the G League.
So last year, Hendricks drafted at 9, George at 16. Hendricks, naturally, by being the first of the two, got a little bit more of the pub. But what happened come training camp? The buzz was, oh, George is making the splash. He's the one who's impressing everybody. The vets are responding to him. Fast forward 15 games to the season. Not only is Keontae George a staple in the rotation, but they had an injury, and now he's in the starting lineup. It's not inconceivable that the exact same arc for Collier happens. He comes into training camp, blows everybody away at how well he finishes at the rim, how connective he is as a passer, and how he's creating his own shot. So, and then Cody Williams, who's getting all the pub on draft night, might take a little bit longer to develop all those skills and be an impactful player.
An interesting thought exercise.
That's a valid point.
What if you swapped Ron Holland and Isaiah Collier? Like, what if Collier had played on Ignite as the lead guard for Ignite, and Holland went and played for USC? Like, would that have changed how they were viewed and drafted?
That's a fantastic thought. I think it would. like I think you would probably see very similar things that happen. Holland maybe doesn't fall as much as Collier,
Yeah.
but I think he does fall a little bit. Where it's like you're right. I mean, although you could argue that the G League Ignite was a freaking mess this year, and that didn't help Ron Holland, but in some ways it did with the injuries they had and not having a point guard, because he's able to like experiment and do a lot of other things that he didn't necessarily do in high school, with like being an initiator, having the ball in his hands. Like he made a lot of mistakes and he turned the ball over, but I think that was good for him to show that. So I don't know, but that's kind of my thought there. I think that we would see some reversal in where they fell on the board tonight.
Well, and even like in their stats, right? Like, is Isaiah Collier a 20-point a game scorer in the G League? I actually think he could be. Like, I don't think that would have been
kind of like Scoot the year before, right?
Yeah, I actually kind of I like that you made the Scoot comp. Like, different players, but like functionally, I'm just trying to think of like Collier in the G League. I actually think it kind of looks like Scoot. Like, I think that kind of plays out the same way.
And yeah, those assist numbers probably look better because the guys can catch and finish around the rim maybe a little bit better than some of his bigs, and so
more spaced out, like more space to operate, faster pace, which I actually think is good for Collier. That's interesting.
Yeah, Collier won't play the minutes that Scoot played last year, but it's not inconceivable that by the end of the year, in games where he meaningfully played, that he's actually pretty close to the 14, 3, 4, 5. Not for a season-long average, but in games where he meaningfully got minutes, that he approximates something like that, which is what Scoot had. Many were underwhelmed by Scoot's rookie season last year, and for good reason, but coming from a 29th pick in the draft, holy cow.
Yeah, like if you get even something close to what Scoot rookie season looked like at pick 29, I think that's a home run. Like, I'd be thrilled about that.
I mean, we already had the greatest summer league team in Jazz history crafted before this draft, but it's like, I hope that the Delta Center is literally sold out and packed. I'm so excited to go watch these dudes. It's like Bryce, Keontae, Taylor, Walker, Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier. Like, our summer league team is lit.
Lit, dude. It's gonna be sick.
Well, honestly, the G League games, Salt Lake Stars.
Salt Lake
Stars are going to be really fun too.
They just doubled in price. Yeah, like we're lit on the Stars. Baylor Shireman, thank God, went ahead of us. Actually, love it. Like classic Boston Celtics guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm shocked though, Furphy. I thought Furphy would have been the guy here.
I would have anticipated it as well, but hey, we just got to get through the 31st pick, and then we can get another Aussie, get an Aussie back on the Jazz.
The three guys that are really
that'll be a home run
value for me: Furphy, Tyler Smith, and Cam Christie. Would love any of those three. In fact, again, and I'm just over Jordan Clarkson, but I would just trade Jordan Clarkson straight up for any of those guys. Even Filipowski or a Kolek, I would take straight up for Clarkson. Like, just get Clarkson off my team and get me something else. I'd love to get another. Who has the picks coming up here? So I need to pull up. I'm trying to think like who might even be like options for us, because I'd love to get more picks actually right here in the second round in this range. Let's see. So we have Toronto right ahead of us.
Yep, that's right.
And then we got the Bucks, the Blazers, the Spurs, the Pacers, the Timberwolves, the Knicks again. I don't know if this has changed. Maybe some of this has changed. I'm looking at Tankathon's board, so maybe some of the trades. But man, Clintman is still available. I'm just going through my board. KJ Simpson, Josh's favorite player. Juan Nunez, Durasic, Antonio Reeves, Ajinça, Trenton Flowers, Harrison Ingram. I mean, there's Justin Edwards. There was some talk about the Jazz and Justin Edwards. I don't think I would be thrilled about that, but hey, almost like another Collier thing. Like, Justin Edwards was one of the top tier high school guys, and then really disappointed. But maybe you take a flyer on him too while you're at it. Bronny, we could do Bronny.
Oh yeah, baby.
hold clutch hostage.
That's a big storyline we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Bronny being taken 17 to the Lakers or 20-something to Phoenix. Or
hey, thank God we didn't talk about that. Bronny is whatever. I actually like him. Like, he's a fine player, but yeah.
So the Jazz end night one, round one of the 2024 NBA draft with Cody Williams and at 10 and Isaiah Collier at 29. We're all very, very pleased with how the draft unfolded for the Jazz, and it's been a fun night, guys. Any parting thoughts?
I'm so happy. That's all I can say. I'm so happy, and I hope you get your guy tomorrow, Adam. But for me right now, like I said before, that's an A+ draft for me. The Jazz got
honestly 32 is gravy.
Yeah, the Jazz got the sixth best player on my board at 29, and they got everybody's guy that they wanted at 10, Cody Williams. Like, for all the crap that I've given the Jazz and for how bad they've drafted, and granted, this still could look bad in 5 years, right? Neither one of these guys could pan out, and we could debate that. But as of tonight and today, like, I'm absolutely thrilled with this draft. It couldn't have gone any better, in my opinion.
Mark, parting thoughts, man.
Yeah, I'm still like shook from the Collier pick. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. But I mean, A++ for me so far, and I mean, tomorrow's shaping up to be pretty good for them too. Like, I still have, Furphy's my 18th player, Tyler Smith's my 19th, Cam Christie's my 23rd. Like I said, any of those three guys, even Filipowski, who I have a love-hate relationship with, but he's still around. Like, some really good value still for the Jazz tomorrow. And Cody Williams was my 4th player on my board and was my number 1 somewhat realistic target for the Jazz. I'm thrilled about that pick. And then to get Collier, who, we talked about kind of ad nauseum now, but to get him at that value is just, really interesting and kind of crazy. And, we'll see what happens. But even if you are a hater of Collier, I think it's hard to complain about the value of getting him at that stage of the draft.
No doubt.
So, yeah, and we'll see, right? Like, it's always like, we'll see. You can get an A++ on draft night and then get an F in actual results. Boy, in terms of what it looks like right now, I have a hard time imagining a Jazz draft that I've been this excited about maybe ever. Like, keeping it within reason of like realistic outcomes. Like,
yeah,
I'm having a hard time thinking of a time that I've been like this encouraged by the Jazz when they close out the picks for now, right? I'm really, really excited about this, and I think fans should be really excited about it.
Indeed. Well, it's only night one. We won't be doing a stream tomorrow, but definitely look out for what the Jazz do at 32 tomorrow. Appreciate you guys. It's been a fun stream, and see you next year and on the Twitterverse in between.
Yeah, thanks for setting this up.
Thank you so much, Adam. This was a blast. Really appreciate you doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go Jazz.
That's right. Go Jazz.